A packed, buzzing crowd swarms around the kiosk, all fired up. Lost in the chaos of the crowd and the yelling, a young man squeezes through and asks his assistant for a few products, and the flustered girl rushes to hand him the order, thankfully thanking him for the wait as she does. After they sell it all, the two explode into celebration, then immediately start crunching the numbers to see how much profit they just made. Once the capital was taken down, they raked in a massive 1,600,000 yen. The little girl's jaw drops. She can't believe Shiro's sales skills, calling him straight up a magician. Shiro blushes with embarrassment and shoots back. I'm totally exaggerating. Then we cut to modern Japan. Rishiru is dropped in the middle of a forest, staring at a portal that leads straight back to his bedroom. He never says a word about the fantasy city stretching behind him, and the room ahead where his grandmother's altar waits. The kid tells you the whole story of how he wound up at the house his grandmother left him. When he yanked open the closet door in that room with the altar, he found a portal staring back at him, straight into another world. Shiro shut the door and told himself it was just a hallucination, because the pressure from that toxic old job had him completely fried. But when he swings the closet open again, he freezes, because this time it's painfully real. His grandmother kept one massive secret, and the young man only remembers it now because she vanished 7 years ago, until the government finally stamped her as dead. Back when Shiro was just a kid, he wouldn't stop peppering everyone with one question: what was the secret? And she'd promise, I'll tell you when you're older. Before she could ever explain it, the elderly woman passed away, and right beside a photo she left a letter packed with instructions. In the letter, she blurts out an apology for keeping it from him, then drops the bombshell that she's a witch from a world called Rufagio. She spills the truth. That closet ties straight to Rufagio, the land of magic, wild powers, brutal monsters, and whole races that aren't human at all. And the old witch even leaves behind a ring that lets him understand their language like it was always his. She orders Sherry to hunt down 2 books tucked behind the altar and read them. He spots the ring tucked inside the books, but the moment he reads the writing, everything goes blank. He can't understand a word. Then his grandmother's voice slams into his thoughts, and the young man remembers he has to play it. Buzzing with excitement, he suddenly realizes he can finally read what's written. As he reads, a voice in his head blurts out, "You've unlocked equivalent exchange." Shiro jolted in shock and spun his head around, hunting for who was there. But then it clicks, he's the alum. Just like leveling up in a game, he slots in a brand new ability, straight into his inventory. Torn up with indecision, the young man sits there thinking, should he make his move or back off? Then it hits him. His grandmother's words echo in his mind, and he realizes the truth will all make sense the moment he gets there. He grins, finishes getting everything ready, and vows to hit the road the very next day. He kneels and says a heartfelt prayer for his grandmother. The very next morning, Shiro jumps up buzzing with excitement and heads out for his adventure. After pushing through hours of walking, he finally stumbles into a city, where warriors, cat girls, and mages stride down the streets like the whole town is about to explode. Swept up by the city lights, he suddenly realizes the walk has left him ravenous. A skewer stall snaps his attention. Shiro's curiosity takes over, and he blurts out what kind of meat it is. The vendor leans in and swears it's a horned rabbit, then casually names the price, just 3 bronze coins. The young man shoots out an apology, insisting he has no money. Then the vendor snaps, furious and left fuming. The moment he thinks about that skewer, his mouth starts watering like it can't wait to taste the delicious treat. He suddenly remembers he's got 4,200 yen left from the convenience store change, and he really wishes he could pay for those skewers with it. Right then, a glowing magic circle blossomed in his hand, and where Yen's coin was, it was suddenly there. The kid's jaw drops, and he bolts straight to the food stall, firing off a question to the vendor. Is that coin that just appeared a bronze one? The vendor nods and confirms it, yet shakes his head at the whole thing and concludes Shiro must be a foreigner. Shiro throws a wild celebration, basking in how perfectly his equivalent exchange works. And then he orders 3 skewers. He digs in with pure humility, devouring every bite like it's a gift. But his hopes crash hard, because the seasoning tastes like nothing special. The kid kicks off the experiment by flipping those coins right back into yen. Realizing that his power he can cash in those coins anytime he wants. He figures out he can cash in and get rich. He keeps running his tests, cranking out bigger conversions until the result is a real silver coin. He hurries back to the food stall and asks, "Can I pay with that?" But the vendor snaps back that he's got no change to spare. Shiro breaks down what went down and crunches his money numbers in his head. He takes the turn and barrels into the area to scout what's out there. Until he storms into the market. Shiro can't wait to jump into conversation with everyone there, especially those cat girls. He realizes his modern clothes are pulling every stare in the room. A little girl strides up to him with a bouquet of flowers, offering them like a spark of hope. She's on edge, shaking a little, and when Shiro asks the price, she freezes and can't bring herself to answer. He fixes his eyes on the price, and she panics even harder. She dropped her offer. A young man plucks a bright yellow flower, drops 3 bronze coins into the girl's hands, and leaves her stunned. He tells her, "For that price, I want some answers, and I want details." And then he leans in, pushing for more information. He tells her to introduce herself, and the little girl beams and says, "My name is Aina." Shiro quickly steps in and introduces himself to her too. With the intel from ANA, he realizes the city he's in is Menorich, right there inside the Jalum Kingdom. And there are 3 currency tiers. Bronze equals 100 yen, silver hits 10,000 yen, and gold is a whopping 1 million yen. In that world, people earned just 8 silver coins a month, and gold coins were so rare they might as well have been myths. And even Anna, just a kid, couldn't sell or run a business without government permission. Shiro buys even more flowers from the little girl, and leaves her staring at him like she can't even breathe. She leans in and tells him, "Just 1 flower, that look weird as hell." Aina is overflowing with gratitude. Make sure it tells him that his grandmother will light up when she sees those beautiful flowers. The moment he talks about the flowers, her heart gets swept away by every word. Shiro grabbed Sir's attention and demanded he take him straight to the government office. Aina can't wait. She jabs a finger forward and points the way. "Ain't have just dropped the news, we're here, and they've arrived." He jabs his finger excitedly at that giant building, and Shiro instantly goes nervous, worrying they'll face trouble since he's a foreigner, until the little girl grins and tells him, "Don't worry, everyone there is kind." When he hesitates mid-sentence with the staff, he gets blindsided by her, an old elf with a hard, stern gaze who immediately starts interrogating him. She shoves a form into his hands and lays out exactly how to fill it in. A street vendor gets offered a deal. Pay 10 bronze coins each day, and you're allowed to haul your goods around and sell them right on the streets. The same vendor with the same fee sets up shop at one exact spot. At last, the shop owner agrees for 3 silver coins a day. Then the elf leans in and explains the catch. The shop needs a contract of at least 10 days. Sherry snaps to the second auction and shoves the form into the employee's hands, and the guy's like, "Wait, your name sounds weird." He blurts out that it's super cheap, then panic hits, because he has no clue what prices are like here. Yale's face relaxes and she nods. Yep, it's cheap because the mayor keeps the prices in check. Then she cheers the young man on, wishing him luck in his new business. Shiro thanks her, then blurts out to Aina that he's stunned everything actually worked out, and he turns to the little girl, promising he'll be back at the market. Aina looks crushed about having to split from him, but she still nods timidly, lowering her head as she whispers a goodbye. As he stalks away, she spots the mistake. He's heading the wrong way, and she snaps, "That's not it," then points hard to the opposite direction while he's clearly flustered. As they step into the market, the little girl blurts out, "So what's Shiro gonna sell?" With a grin, he starts to boast about the perfect pick, then catches himself. He hasn't planned anything at all, until he notices the young man at Shure in Na smiles and pitches it. Sell adventure gear to everyone who streams through the city. Following the girl's nudge, Shiro whips his head around and spots a sorceress, a warrior, and a whole squad of soldiers. Aina starts telling them the real reason. So many monsters are pouring out into the forest. That young man can't stop thinking about whether the monsters are crawling out of that forest, and he paints a nightmare in his head, some brutal creature lunging at him with tentacles. He weighs the girl's idea, and she grimly admits that with everything going like this, she can't move nearly as many flowers. Then her face lights up again. She's thrilled that Shiro brought her several flowers, and with a huge grin, she blurts out how happy she is to have finally met him. That young man flushes with embarrassment when Anna calls him out, and she immediately offers to lead him through the market. They burst into a lantern shop where the shopkeeper looks eerily like him. Then they head straight to a sleeping bag shop and get greeted by a vendor in a cat cloak. After that, they hit a knife shop and a rope shop, where a woman in a bunny outfit grabs the rope and ties up a man right in front of them. Shiro's jaw drops at the endless shops and goods in that place, and the little girl's triumphant grin seals it. She even gives her chest a tiny punch, like "told you so." But the shock hits too hard, her breathing turns into coughing fits, and that worry instantly spikes in the young man's face. She slips her hand into Shira's and points out the shops nearby, and when he glances at her, his face softens, like he's already sure that one day she'll make an amazing wife. While Anna keeps the conversation rolling nonstop, the young man sinks into his own thoughts, quietly longing for a beautiful wife and a daughter sooner rather than later. Right as he's about to speak, the creepy girl cuts in and asks what he's planning to sell. So he leans in and whispers in her ear, but the moment she hears it, her face twists into confusion, like she can't make sense of his words. The scene snaps to the next morning, and the young man shoots upright and stretches like he can't wait, already buzzing to get his products ready. Then the girl pops in, grinning, ready to jump into action. When Shuru asked if she'd sell flowers again that day, she nodded fast. She'd gotten up early just to pick them. The young man hypes her up, telling her those flowers are gorgeous and she's about to sell them all. So when Aina hears him, her face lights up with a bright smile. She says she's selling the flowers to earn money for medicine for her mom. Then she bounds off with an energetic goodbye, and he grins back, telling her he'll catch her again later. Anna sprints with her basket and offers up the flowers, but one bump, wham, she tumbles to the ground. Tears streamed down his face as he stared at the moment, shouting his support for the girl and swearing he'd give it everything he had too. Right then, the first customer shows up out of nowhere and wastes no time asking what he's selling. Confused to the bone, the customer stares at the box Shura handed him and blurts, "Is this some kind of craft?" Shura grins and says, "Nope, it's a matchbox," then taps the inside where a tiny stick sits ready to spark. The adventurer scoffs and says he's never heard of anything like that, totally stunned that a tiny piece of wood could somehow spark a flame. Shuru proves it by slapping a match against the box and snapping it to life with a tiny flame, and the customer leans in, only to look completely baffled at first. Then he snaps into action, shoving in shock as what he just saw hits him like a truck, and suddenly a full-on commotion erupts all around him. Knocked flat on the ground, the adventurer gasps in awe, asking how Shiro pulled it off, while Shiro just keeps the lit match blazing right in front of him. The young man shrugs off the customer's question like it's nothing, asking if the adventurer has never seen anything like it before. Shiro just smirks, warns he'll only show it one last time, and starts a countdown. When it hits 0, he strikes again, and the adventurer is blown away, all over again. The moment the crowd catches the adventurer's reaction, they swarm in fast, and complete shock hits everyone in the room. People swear it's witchcraft, magic, a cursed tool, anything, but nobody has ever laid eyes on something like this. The young man thrusts his product forward, bragging it's effortless to use, and the customers start testing the matches, gaping in shock. Shuru grins to himself, pleased as punch, already imagining how perfectly everything is falling into place. While Anna dragged him through the market, he noticed everyone had never heard of matches, so when he finally got back to his world, he stocked up on boxes and sold them for profit. An old elf swears he's never seen anything like this in 250 years, and the lizard man blurts out an excited, "I know, right?" While the adventurer from earlier nods like, "Yeah, this is genuinely incredible." Trying to spark fire with a stone crawls at a snail's pace, and those magical items, heavy as an anchor, a pain to lug around. Without a witch's help, it takes forever to get a fire going. Shuru catches the smug look on his face and goes, "Yeah, I get it." He kicks off his speech like a tech legend unveiling a brand new device, then declares that, thanks to him, people can finally toss aside all those headaches and step into real freedom. The scene flashes to a young man dressed like Steve Jobs, clutching that tiny box as the crowd erupts. The young man blurts out who he's supposed to buy from, and someone jumps in with an answer, right as everything gets yanked away. With a stone-cold, serious look, the adventurer steps in and demands, "So, how much are the matches?" The crowd starts whispering in disbelief, convinced it's got to cost a fortune. And Shiro can't wait, he's craving this exact moment. He leaned in and demanded the adventurer's price estimate, and after a quick pause, the customer shot back that he figured they'd cost 80 bronze coins. Then the young man grinned. Shura starts piecing it together. He's got two plays: jack the price and sell it as luxury, or drop it cheap and cash in hard on the demand. In the first auction, he'd rake in big profit from every single sale, only for it to be so pricey that barely anyone could actually afford it. At first, more people could get their hands on it, but the moment he priced it there, his own profit would likely take a hit. Then he bursts with excitement and declares that every box holds 40 matches, and since his shop is just opening, he's slashing the price. He's offering each box for just 5 bronze coins. Everyone is stunned. Then, boom, they're right back to ordering, and Shuru snaps at them to watch out because those matches can go bad when they get wet. In the end, the young man sells to more than 100 people, and the only one left is an old man with everything completely sold out. He rushes to apologize to the old man and promises him a number for the queue tomorrow, but the elderly guy snaps back. I'm only 120 years old. Shiori collapses flat on the ground, utterly drained, staring up in disbelief at the sheer crowd, and dreading what kind of monster crowd is coming tomorrow. Dark clouds swallow the sky as the young man wrestles with the terrifying question of whether he can pull it off. And then he spots a flower dropping to the ground, and all he can think is, I shouldn't need anything else. The story whips over to Anna, and she darts down to snatch up a flower that just tumbled to the ground. With her usual sparkle, the girl keeps pushing her flowers, bragging they're dirt cheap. Then out of nowhere, someone yells her name. When she whips around, Shiru's right there, and her eyes widen. She blurts out about the shop. He shrugs and tells her he already sold everything and shut it down earlier. Eamon cheers for him, but the moment Shiru asks about her, the little girl blushes hard, then ducks out of sight, clutching her basket of flowers like a secret. Red-faced, she blurts out that she has no idea. Then, as she wonders why her flowers won't sell, hot tears start rising in her eyes. Still fuming, Shiru blurts out, Are you okay? Then wipes her tears, flashes a brave smile, and tells him she's fine, before sprinting away to sell her flowers. The young man tells her to hold up, yanks her by the arm, and when she stares at him like she's lost, his voice drops, tears welling up as he begs her to just listen. She blares out, What did you say? Then demands answers, while he tells her to help him tomorrow, and she hesitates, asking, Are you sure everything's really okay? Shira snaps at her to quit the long explanations, because she's not just talking, she can genuinely help him. He promises he'll pay for her service, and the girl dips her head in quiet submission. She grins, bursting with excitement, and tells them she'll handle it, because working with Shiru has her absolutely thrilled. The young man blurts out his thanks, but Anna shuts him down fast. She insists it's no big deal, because the truth is, she hasn't sold a single flower. Clutching his hand, she leans in and declares that it's she who owes him everything. He watches in awe with pure, heart-melting affection. He figures that since she thanked him so genuinely, now he's got to grind twice as hard. Shiru leans in and asks, Can we meet again tomorrow? And the little girl, still gripping his hand, answers in a chilling tone that they can. They call it goodbye, and the young man whips his head around, checking every corner. Once he's sure nobody's watching, he finally lets himself relax. He rips open a portal to his world, because he refuses to get discovered. He tells them the closet portal can be opened from anywhere, but he still fears the rumors flying around it. Then the young man steps through and vanishes back home. The moment he steps through the portal and lands at his house, he immediately checks his earnings. She uses the equivalent exchange to turn that money into yen, and he crunches the numbers and realizes he raked in 215,550 yen from just that single day's sales. Then freezes, shocked at the cash, because it's more than the paycheck he used to get from his old job. Shiru's daydreaming hard, thinking if this keeps going, he'll never have to work again, as he imagines himself bouncing between consoles and devouring manga. Then reality slaps him, and he snaps into action to prep for tomorrow. The story slams into Shiru in the supermarket, hunting high and low for the matchboxes aisle. He spots them, then leans in and realizes these aren't just any matchboxes, survival kinds built to shrug off wind and water, and he blurts out, I didn't even know these existed. He snatches up a bunch of boxes, banking on turning them into profit with adventurers. Yet the supermarket cashier clocks it as weird and can't help but wonder if she's dealing with a total maniac. With his hands packed to the brim, the young man finally realizes he forgot one brutal thing, how hard it'll be to lug all of it home. Bettany snaps to it and figures that if equivalent exchange works in his world, then his other power should click into place too. He hauls the shopping to a hidden spot, then snaps open his spatial storage like it's pure magic. Right then, a tear in reality ripped open out of nowhere. Still shocked by what he's about to do, he hurls the packages into the rift. Then after the last one disappears, he erupts in celebration, proud that he's just unlocked his very own pocket dimension. He remembers how he used to cram all his stuff into a backpack, and even now, thanks to that old job, his back still throbs in pain, because back then, there's no way he could have lugged everything he bought if he'd had to squeeze it all into a bag. The young man goes wide-eyed when he realizes he can now see every item hidden inside that giant magic circle, and he can't stop wondering if his powers have any limit at all, and what in the world his grandmother is up to. Shiru glares at his own hands, feeling it sink in. He won't have to carry a single thing ever again. Then he decides to hustle selling matchboxes for 4 more days, and once that's done, he'll figure out what to sell next. The young man shoots his arm up with total confidence, declaring that with these powers, he's about to get rich, big time. At that moment, a little girl jabs her finger at him and blurts to her mother that the strange man is talking to himself again. So her mother snaps at her for pointing, and Shuru's cheeks burn as she bites her embarrassment back and slips away, heading home. Dawn breaks as Anna sits in a plain little brick house, and that small burl of a kid trots off, saying goodbye to her mother. On the windowsill sits a vase of flowers, and the girl's mom is sprawled on her bed. Then she snaps, asking if Anna isn't planning to take those flowers with her. With a bright grin, the little girl says, "No way, I'm not," and then explains she's helping make sure her shot lands. Meanwhile, Shiro slips into his real-world grandmother's home, drops to his knees before her altar, and pleads for her blessing. He steps through the portal, buzzing with excitement, ready to kick off the day. Aina strides through the city, grinning like she owns the whole place. When Shiro finally catches up, he shoots her a quick greeting and blurted an apology for keeping her waiting. The girl blurts that she just got here, but she clearly holds herself back. Then, little by little, she gives in and admits she waited a bit longer. And just like she was telling Shiro, the customers were already packing in and lining up. Only then did he clock it. People were already swarming around the shop. Aina spun toward him, bursting to begin, but the young man shot back that he still had a few things to set up first. Right then, he spots it. His shop's lines have exploded so badly that the crowd is spilling out and crushing the flow of the other stores. The young man shuts it down instantly, because the moment he remembers his old job, he knows this won't end well. Right then, another shop owner confronts him about that crazy line, and Shiro steps up and vows to handle the organizing from now on. When he finally pays attention, it hits him. Wait, that guy is the skewer stall vendor. The man finally found Shiro, and when he told him he'd heard about the matchsticks, he couldn't even wrap his head around the fact that it was really him standing there. Seeing that the line never moves and not one customer has been served, he snaps to the young man and asks if something's wrong. Shiro then spills the whole truth about what's going on with the other shops. And the merchant finally gets what's going on, so his companion blurts out that Shiro should use their stall for free today, since it's a little farther down the way. The young man asks if it'll be a problem, and she shakes her head. "No worries, we decided to take a break." Shiro thanks her, and Inna's eyes light up like sparks. The young man blurts out a question. Is she the merchant's wife? And then immediately swats that idea away, claiming she's his sister. The woman flashes a wink at Shiro, leaving him stunned because they don't look anything alike. And yeah, she's seriously beautiful. Shiro and Aina dash across the tiny map, heading straight for the roasted meat shop. The instant they step in, the duo bolts into action and starts sorting the products right away. Shiro shows Aina what to sell and how big everything is, and she blurts that she's got it, even though her eyes scream, "I'm drowning." Shiro clocks the nerves and asks if she's all right. Then, despite all that tension, they open the shop anyway. Outside, a giant line snakes around the building. When they finally reach the front, they rush out apologies for the delay and announce the moment they're about to start serving. Shiro calls out for the priority ticket holders to step forward, then turns to Anna and lays out her exact game plan for taking orders. The Grove is all flustered, but he snaps to it and obeys Shiro's orders. He's not that wowed. Those boxes flew off the shelves way too fast. The line's still packed with people trying to grab a spot, and Shiro snaps to the next customer while that girl just watches the whole thing unfold. She can't believe what she's seeing, and it hits her. Wait, is this what sales magic really feels like? Soon the doors shut, and the young man shot an apology to the customers because the stock had finally run dry. And I still can't wrap my head around it. Shiro just told me it happened because of her. And hey, massive thanks to the skewer stall owners. He leans in and starts counting every last coin they rake in. And he's frozen in shock. He really thought yesterday's sales would net them 200,000 yen. But after just 3 hours, they've already stacked up 15 million yen. He grabs it back and starts calculating. Boom. Almost 490,000 yen an hour, and he can't help but wonder if that's what millionaires rake in. The young man decides to bolt so he doesn't get mugged, but the second he straps the backpack on, the weight yanks him forward and makes him lean. It hits him that this is way too much to carry, so he considers using his pocket dimension, but he refuses to let anyone else see. Realizing it won't work, he shoves Anna a bag packed with coins as payment for her work. Then the little girl beams and thanks him like her heart's exploding with joy. Shiro pats the girl's head, tells her to pick out a gift for her mom, and praises her for being an amazing help. Anna says she's the one who should thank him for getting her the job at the shop, but Shiro cuts her off, telling her to quit thanking him. He insists she earned everything the hard way, then flashes her a wink like it's their little secret. The girl pouts harder, swearing she still wants to thank him properly, and Shuru breaks into laughter. Right then, her stomach let out this loud growl, and she instantly blushed with full-on embarrassment. The young man snaps open his bag and blurts that they never got a break. Then he turns to the girl and tells her to eat with him. Shira yanks a few sandwiches from the bag, and Aina, eyes practically popping, demands, "Is it bread?" The second she takes a bite, she's instantly hooked, calling it insanely delicious, and her eyes sparkle as she chomps happily. Shuru can't help but smile because the food won her over. As they're stuffing food in their mouths, a deadly wound creeps closer and demands a little bit of his time, because it's a tall, well-dressed young woman with long hair who shows up like she means business. She leans in and says she's heard whispers about those matches, then shoots back. So was it Shuru selling them? He says, yeah, it is, but snaps that every single thing is already sold, and the woman fires back that she didn't come here to buy anything. She presses her hand to her chest and declares, I came for you. She steps forward and declares, I'm Karen Sankarika, the mayor of this city. Karen blurts out that she knows she's late, and honestly, she looks perfectly healthy. Then the real shock hits. The mayor herself comes looking for him, staring in disbelief like she can't believe any of this is actually happening. He's totally stunned that a woman this beautiful and young is actually the mayor, because in his head, the mayor was supposed to be a tough, muscular powerhouse. The young man nervously blurts out, so, what do you want to talk about? While Enno leans in, watching every move like he's locked in. Karen beams and thanks him, praising this merchant of Shiro's caliber as he's brought into the city's trade, then bows so deeply it feels like respect poured straight into the ground. Shura shoots back that he should be the one thanking her for letting him sell his goods, and the woman can't help but smile, because he's seriously humble. She snaps that almost every merchant in town is hard-headed, and the young man just stares, totally lost. Suddenly she whips around and tells him he can help her. Shrews gets flustered, but they start talking anyway as Anna falls asleep, dreaming about food. Karen snaps that since the city sits out in the middle of nowhere, the merchants act like they're doing the place a favor just by showing up. Then they jack up prices for everything they sell, while the city's own goods get dumped at bargain rates, leaving the city's finances completely out of balance. The woman blurts that she's determined to fix it, and she sure has everyone staring back with wide eyes. Then she keeps going, thrilled, explaining that's exactly why the city needs a market. After she finishes explaining, she can't stop herself from feeling awkward as the young man stares at her like that. The woman thrusts a key into his hand and tells him she won't let him keep it safe. She wants to make sure he does. He's baffled, convinced this could be the key to getting into her place, but he immediately shuts it down. There's no way, not with her offer, not even hinting at a full-on harem. Karen winks at him, then drops the bombshell. It's the key to her house. Shuru is left wide-eyed and speechless, so she blurts, what's wrong? And he fires back, it's nothing. But Anna cracks that she gets it, then drops the bombshell that the mayor wants to move in with Shuru. He asks what she means, and the little girl repeats it, clear as day, that the mayor wants to marry him. Karen clenches her teeth, mortified, and flat-out denies it. She snaps that she's not some lonely girl out there hunting for a guy, and she denies it with everything she's got. She steadies herself and jumps back into it, asking for a favor. Then Shuru cuts right in. The young man fires off a question about whether she's married, and Karen blurts that she isn't, turning clear human red. She points at the empty house and tells Shuru he can slip in with the key, then orders him that starting tomorrow, he'll sell his products on the first floor. Sherwood blinked in surprise and demanded to know why, just like he figured. She admitted she'd been getting complaints from other merchants. They said they couldn't sell because that line at Shiro's shop was stretching forever. He gets it, he sees how brutal that kind of work is. Karen grins like she just won, tells him she'll show him around, and insists he doesn't have to decide anything yet. They stride through the city until they finally reach the house Karen promised, and when they step inside, every word vanishes. Shuru shoots, is everything really okay? While Ine dashes around, cheering like crazy because the shop's got something new, and the woman adds, I really hope you two end up loving it. And she leans in, asking for one last thing. Aina steps close, whispers into his ear that the mayor might want to know whether he has someone. Red in the face, he yells that he gets it, then doubles down, insisting he's got no girlfriend. She storms off, leaving the mayor humiliated, and when he tries to press her, she blurts out, flustered to the bone, that he's got it all wrong, she wasn't even going to ask that. The young man insists it was just a joke, but Karen still blushes. Then the mayor snaps from rage to a serious face and demands to know why he decided to sell his products in this city. She tells him it's a tiny town with just 500 people, the kind of place that feels heavy with sadness. And she warns him he'd earn way more profit by chasing bigger opportunities in other cities. Shiro straight up admits it, she's right. But he grins and says, "I love it here," then admits he's only been in the city for 3 days. He realizes Inna busted her tail to help him in the shop, and he can't help but smile at how sweet the mayor is, even while he's stuck living there. The young man leans in and tells her, "Because of that, I love this whole city." The mayor is touched by every word, and her face lights up with pure admiration. Then it hits him. He starts replaying everyone he met in Minorich, and he realizes that even though he's from another world and doesn't know a single city, none of them comes close to how friendly they were there. Karen clutches her chest, tears welling up as she fires off a heartfelt thank you for what he just said. Aina freezes in shock and blurts to Shiro that he made a girl cry. Then he rushes to apologize, swearing it wasn't his intention. The mayor thrusts her hand toward him and tells him to call her Karen, and he fires back with, "Then call me Jashiru," while Aina steps in to introduce herself, and one by one they all shake hands. The mayor beams, telling them how honored he is to finally meet them. A graph flashes his meteoric climb from a matchstick seller to a shop owner in just 3 days, and he's so swept up in the fantasy that he can practically see his grandma in heaven smiling at him and throwing up a peace sign. The very next day, he slaps his signature on the 1-month contract for the new store. 5 days later, the whole vibe flips. Shiryu bursts in, announces the stock is sold out, and the customers are left staring in pure shock. Now the young man, in a sharp suit and tie, flipping through his notes with growing worry. Because he's sure he sold enough to cover the entire city, so why doesn't it add up? Anna cuts in and tells him, "I'm done, I cleaned the whole store." Yara tells her she can go rest on the 2nd floor. She offers to help him, but he shuts her down, saying she's already worked enough for today. The little girl's face falls like she can't hide how disappointed she is. Shiro stretches in his chair, then lines up a tray of snacks like he's about to kick off the best kind of day. But the second he reaches out to hand it to Aina, he freezes. She's fast asleep. He leans in and watches the little girl drift off to sleep. The second she starts talking, she calls him her father, and Shiro scrambles to correct her, trying to make her understand it's him. But the girl steps in and asks for a hug, so he scoops Anna up in his arms and carries her. She's beaming because her dad finally pulled her into a real hug, and she swears her mom does the exact same thing. Then she tumbles back down into a deep, peaceful sleep, leaving the young man completely stunned. He can't stop wondering if he's become a dad, so he tugs the girl into a blanket and tells her, "If you need anything, just come to me." Anna is still asleep, but she smiles anyway, and Shiro thinks, "This is it, I'm going to give that little girl everything I've got." On day 6 of the shop sales, Shira turns to Anna and hands her the day off. He's wiped out because he forgot what it feels like to work all alone. Right then, the mayor walks into the shop, and the young man tells her the stock is gone again. She just shrugs like that's what you get from a seller like him, until she realizes the real issue. He's moving quantities so huge they don't even match the population of the entire city. Then the mayor leans in and snaps, "I've heard rumors. Some people were buying his stuff and then flipping it in other cities for a quick profit. He figures you should cap the number of products each customer can grab, and when Karen locks eyes with him, serious as a judge, she says she didn't come here for small talk, she came to ask a favor. Realizing this was serious, the young man gestures her upstairs and asks, right on the spot, what she's asking for. Before she even answers, she leans in and asks, "Tell me, does Shiro know about the city's adventurers guild?" The young man lights up and says, "It's called Silver Moon," but the mayor's jaw drops because he definitely didn't expect the kid to already know the city. Shura tells them the reason, because half his customers are adventurers and word travels fast. The guild is basically an outsourcing hub. Clients throw requests at them, and they hand those jobs off to adventurers who run solo as freelancers. That organization foots the bill for missions that actually succeed, wiping out monsters that threaten everyone, hauling back herbs and mushrooms for medicine, and even more missions like that. Karen then blurts out that since he already knows it's a cakewalk, Silver Moon is the only guild in the whole city. And she launches into everything about the guild master. Then Shuru cuts in, agitated and restless. Because the guild master runs the whole organization, he's the top authority everyone bends to. The young man jolts to his feet, blurting out, "Did something happen to the guild master?" After a tense beat, the mayor finally speaks and answers him. Then bam, he bolted, because the shock hit him so hard he couldn't even stand still. While Karen keeps shouting that the guild has zero money left to pay the adventurers, panic gnaws at her. What if they up and leave the city? The young man pales, horrified, because he knows that would be a disaster. Then the mayor drops the bombshell. She's got a plan, and for her, complicated situations are basically just another day at work. She claims the adventurers, guild from the capital, is itching to open a brand new branch right here in the city. But she's always pushed those feelings away, refusing Silver Moon's advances out of pure consideration. Honestly, in this situation, the smartest move is to take the capital's offer. Karen beams and thanks him for his words, but the moment Shiro looks at her, he can't help staring at her body. Then he jerks his gaze away, cheeks burning, insisting it's nothing. The mayor tells her, if you take this request, a guild crew from the capital is coming to town to see if they'll open this branch, or shut the idea down for good. She leans in and demands Sherry take them to the matchboxes. He says he doesn't mind showing them, then flips the script. So what's the problem? Karen stares in disbelief, claiming she's never seen anything like it, not even in the capital, and she demands to know where he got something like that. She stumbles over her words to answer, then blurts out an apology for asking, and says that if the young man really controls the product, the guild's interest will skyrocket. The young man nods and says, I get it. I've got to grab the capital's guild attention if I'm going to make this work. The mayor's thrown off and totally awkward, but Shuru jumps in, swears she'll bring something that'll shock even the mayor herself. Kerrigan swears he's nothing but kind, then nervously promises he'll return the favor. The story snaps to the very next day, and Aina is right back at work, clocking in like she never left. She clocks Shira's worry right away and leans in, asking if everything's okay. He stretches out, laser-focused, determined to bring something that will hook the guild inspector's attention. Suddenly, he snaps up and tells the girl, with zero hesitation, that he needs to get to Karen's house. When he finally arrives at the residence, Karen is left totally stunned at Shira's request. She blurts out, "Are you serious?" and tells him he's itching to become an adventurer, begging for their okay to join in. Hinarin demands, "Are you really serious about tagging along with the adventurers?" And he fires back, "Yes, because that's the only way I can truly figure out what they need to get done." With a stern face, the mayor leaned in and demanded to know if the young man understood the dangers. Because in that whole region, the only place adventurers ever go is the forest. We catch a chilling glimpse of the eastern forest, where a massive, wolf-shaped monster looms in the shadows. Shiro says he knows, and maybe he could swing this as a herb collector adventurer, so Karen nods and agrees it'd be way less dangerous. She tells him she wants to introduce him to some adventurers, but the Silver Moon Guild has her in a tight spot, and things are going downhill fast. Perrin tells the story of how the guild's substitute master slipped to her house the night before, crawling through the shadows, and begged her for money. He broke down in tears and launched himself onto the floor. Shearer blinked in shock. What kind of request was that? Straight to the point. He shot back, "How much does the guild need?" And Karen calmly lifted 10 fingers. The young man asks, "Is it 10 coppers?" And she shakes her head, then he blurts, "What about 10 silvers?" And the mayor shuts him down again. The sheriffs erupt in stunned shouting because they were told it had to be 10 golds, equal to a jaw-dropping 10 million yen. She tears into him for the noise, then ducks her head and snaps that nothing like that could possibly exist in a town that small. Maybe if it was only a 10th, she'd even think about it. But after you shut the guild down, asking them for help later would get brutal. So the mayor glances at the inkstand sitting on her desk, and decides to write a letter right then, shoves it into Shuru's hands and warns him, "Don't get your hopes up. You're not gonna like what you find." Sure, he barrels straight to the Silver Moon Guild. And when he finally shows up, nerves slam into him. This is his first time there. The moment he steps inside, he spots a monstrous mess. And before he can even react, an adventurer barrels into him, sending him crashing to the ground. The warrior claims he's fresh meat here and orders Shura to greet the higher-ups. But Shura scrambles up fast, snapping back that he's not an adventurer at all. He's a merchant. The adventurer keeps pressing his intimidation, hissing that since he's a fancy merchant, he should charge prices for his punches. Shior slips away, convinced nothing like this could ever happen, then slips through a door. As soon as he stepped in, he demanded permission. Then he whips his head around, no one's there. Suddenly a heavy presence presses in. He calls out, "Who's there?" and spots a counter in the room when the sound hits him. Someone is sobbing. He strides up and blurts out that he's got a letter from the mayor. She doesn't even notice at first, until the young man taps her shoulder. He asks for permission and tells her he needs to talk, and right on cue a young girl with rabbit ears and a long ponytail whips around to face him. But she jolts in shock when she realizes she doesn't recognize Shuro. She blurts out questions, shouting who he is and how long he's been lurking, and Shuro's mind races as he wonders if she's even tied to the guild. But the girl won't shut up. She keeps yelling at him, demanding to know why he touched her, and while she's still screaming, she blurts out whether Shuro actually likes her or if it's something like that. She snarls that with just one word from her, the girl from the Silver Moon, she can summon 1,000 hulking men. And in her mind, she's already a captain, barking orders to a brand new revolutionary army. Shior snaps the girl out of her delusions and demands, "Is there seriously nobody else?" She shoots back, "Sometimes there is." Then she digs in her heels and swears that even when she's alone, she'll still be more than enough to bring him down. She swings her arms around, shouting that her punch can shatter rocks. That young guy stared at her, disappointment flaring in his eyes, and thought, "Great, she's gonna be trouble." Shiro barrels in again, demands to know where he can track down the substitute master, and orders her to call him. She claims she can do it, but then the bomb drops. Turns out the guild's substitute master is her, and Shiro is left staring in total disbelief. The rabbit girl named Mill wipes her paws clean and remembers the day she became the new guild master, because the only staff left standing was her. There was another girl, but once the old master ran for it, she vanished into thin air. Emil thumps a bottle onto the table, completely drunk, and blurts to Shuro that they'd been sleeping together. Then the girl erupts, yelling that they never even knew she had found out. And it all kicked off when they slipped into the shadows and kissed in secret corners. But at the end, they spill their love in the master's room, until she snaps, screaming curses and praying they lose everything, get thrashed, and end up sold off as slaves. The metal tells her she reeks of dog scent like her old master, but it quickly swerves to comfort her, insisting she did everything she could. He asks if she's finished venting, and she blushes hard and tells him he's insanely kind for sitting through her complaints for a full 5 hours. Then she starts unbuttoning her shirt, ready to return the affection, but Shuro stops her and asks what she's doing. Right then, Emil yanks her shirt closed and fires off. "Do you have something to do?" The young man shoves the letter from the mayor into her hands. The moment they hear who it's from, the mill explodes into a non-stop barrage of insults. Shiro's spinning, thinking the ring must have glitched, because he can't make heads or tails of it. And then he snaps, saying Grandma probably got mixed up, and that the letter is from Ms. Karen, the mayor of Minorich. But Emil keeps firing off insults at the mayor, blasting her as a foolish, cruel woman. She snatches the letter out of Shiro's hands and snaps, "If this is from Karen, don't even read it. Rip it up and tear the paper into scraps." Shiro bursts into shock, shouting, as the girl snaps back that love affairs and betrayal are the worst thing that can happen. The mill whips around to him and demands, "So what do you have to do with Karen?" She's fuming because the mayor shut down Silver Moon and swept them aside to invite a whole new guild instead. That's why she's convinced the mayor's wildly indecent. Right then, Karen sneezes in her office. The girl sobs, saying she even bowed at the mayor's feet, yet Karen still won't front her 10 gold coins. Then the millworkers curse Karen to the heavens, calling her heartless. Shura tries to calm the blow by saying it's an enormous sum, like Karen had to be dealing with bigger worries than that. The girl snaps around in an instant, glaring at Shuru like, "So you're really gonna keep defending the mayor?" She leans in and asks if that young man has any interest in Karen. With tears streaming down her face, she confesses she still loves the mayor. She calls her best friend to the end. Shur believes you never, ever insult someone, especially your best friend. Mel wipes her tears and snaps that without the money, Vilder is finished, and she has no idea what she's supposed to do next. The young man tells her, "You spilled your feelings to me about the mayor, so go ahead and cry. I'll forgive you for tearing up that letter." Shuru thrusts a handkerchief into Emil's hands and blurts that he's got a request for the guild. The girl pops to her feet, straightens her hat, and asks what the request is. He tells her he wants to tag along on an adventurer's mission, and Emil promises she'll put in the request. Only this is something no one has ever done before. The young man leans in and asks if it's tough to set up, and she smiles, saying she can only think of one group that fits. There are 4 top-tier members in this group, so you're looking at a seriously pricey fee. She spills the group's name, Azra Flash, and then, huddled around a campfire in the forest, a long-haired sorceress sits beside a tall, middle-aged cleric, a young warrior, and a cat girl. Emil starts tallying the fee with sharp focus. Right when she's about to announce it will be exactly 36 silver coins, Shuru suddenly cuts in with zero politeness and slams a heavy dive onto the counter. He cracks the vault open to reveal 100 silver coins, then asks if that'll be enough, before flashing a grin like, And if it isn't, I can throw down even more. It mills with eyes wide in shock, and she can't hide her surprise at the unexpected amount. So before she even thinks, she blurts out, "What does Shira do for a living?" Shiro doesn't dodge the question. He answers bluntly. He's a total novice merchant. Then he asks if she can push the negotiation forward, and the middle takes a deep breath and nods. She's in, and she tells him the money's more than enough to cover the mission fee. Then she winks in a secretive little way, and Sharu, completely hooked, stares in stunned silence as it all clicks. Emil is unbuttoning her clothes right in front of him, and Sharu just blinks, baffled. She meets his eyes with a rosy flush, then right in slow motion, starts slipping off pieces of her clothes as she steps closer, smiling sweetly. She admits that, for all that innocence, she really does love rich people. Shuri snaps his gaze away, clearly shaken, and the thought hits him. Of course this was coming. Imbel slides a little closer, eyes sparkling with mischief, and asks if she can call him Shuru, only to get an instant, firm no from the young man. She bursts out laughing, head tilted, and shrugs like, "Sure, he's mean, but I don't care." Then she grins and says, "Call me Emmy," and suddenly the distance between you two feels like it's shrinking even more. With a low, secretive whisper pressed against his ear, she swears Shuru is different. Rich as he is, he's still something special, and Shuru's face instantly flames red. With sheer effort, he wriggles free from Mimmel's grasp, panic hammering through his chest as his heartbeat races. He doesn't even look back. He backs away, anxious to the bone. All he can think about is the adventurers meeting tomorrow. Shuru dives headfirst into his own thoughts, replaying every second since he arrived in this world, especially the instant he found that portal hiding in the wardrobe, and then the day he met Ina, when everything that followed exploded into motion. Before he knew it, everything spiraled, and he ended up working at the mayor's shop. The Silver Moon Guild's mystery keeps spinning in his head, and he can't help replaying that awkward, surprise meeting with the substitute master, Emil, equal parts curiosity and embarrassment. His thoughts get ripped apart the moment the words, "Hey," hit his ears. Anna calls him back to reality, looking genuinely worried, and asks if he's really about to shut the shop down for a while. Shero nods and says it'll be just 3 days. She's going to live like an adventurer. And Aina listens, grins, and understands right away, telling her it makes her happy too since she's got her own things to take care of. Then Aina turns to go, and Shero spots a tiny backpack strapped to her back. He's clearly uneasy, and he blurts out, "Is something wrong?" Then Aina flashes a gentle smile and reassures him it's nothing. Right before she turns to leave, she leans in and tells him, "Be careful." With the farewell still ringing in his ears, Shuru storms straight to the guild. He slams to a stop right before the massive wooden door. The moment he reaches for the door handle, he yanks it open and freezes, stunned to find a familiar face waiting there. Emil suddenly bursts in, blurts that she's been waiting for him this whole time, and practically yanks him toward the door to come inside right now. Sheer stops dead as last night's memories crash into his head, heat surging up his face while he snaps his gaze away, clearly embarrassed. Emil catches it, blinks, and asks what he's afraid of. Before he can even speak, she reassures him with a grin that she won't eat him. Then she flashes a bold gesture and pivots the whole conversation, pulling in a fresh crew of adventurers. Silver Rank, the guild's shining pride. Then Shuryu scans the crew and spots a young adventurer parked on a nearby bench, watching everything like he can't look away. Emil keeps talking, saying this crew will stick with Shuru through his mission to hunt down special herbs. Then 2 burls in the group lock eyes with Sharu, and just as Emil tries to name their leader, the young guy sitting there shoots to his feet. With a grin full of excitement, he greets Shuru and blurts out that it's been ages since they last saw each other. Shuru just stares, blink after blink, trying to dig the boy's face out of his memory. And then it hits, recognition sparks. That adventurer, he was the very first guy to buy the matches. The boy steps up and formally introduces himself. "Liar," he says with authority, "and I run this crew." A lighter than the points. Then bam, Rolf steps out, an older man in clerical robes, closing in with a friendly smile and calling Shuru like they've known each other for years, telling him he really hopes they'll team up and work well together. Liar drops a crucial bombshell. Rolf may be a cleric, but that guy's a legit warrior. His go-to weapon is a mace, and even with that calm vibe, Liar warns you not to push him because one wrong move and he'll snap. Then he brings in the next recruit. Neska, a young girl with long hair, draped in a cloak and towering under a giant witch hat as she grips her staff. She's the group's sorceress. Liar nudges the girl to speak up, and Neska only murmurs, all sweet and soft, that it's an honor to meet him. Then Liar grins and adds, "She doesn't talk much, but her magic is pure talent. The snag is that her spells take a little longer to come out." So right then, Nesca lifts her staff and flicks Lyra lightly on the head, then leans in and mutters for him to stay out of it. Lyra huffs, snapping back that he won't do it until she learns to cast faster. Then Nesco just rolls her eyes and says she'll think about it. Just as Lyra is about to kick off the introductions, chaos erupts. At the back of the room, someone launches into a wild flip in midair. With a slick, nimble drop, she touches down gracefully between Lyra and Shuru, then beams and throws out her introduction. I'm Kulfa. And Shuru just stares, utterly curious. His eyes lock on her feline ears, and they twitch out of nowhere. So his curiosity erupts, and he blurts out whether she really belongs to the cat race. Lyra's expression turns grim as he admits that tons of people hate this race. Yet even some guild clients can't stand them, and Kilful shoots the leader a look, saying it's totally strange to her. Shuru snaps with outrage, baffled that anyone could possibly hate such a cute race. Then Kilda hears it, flashes a confident smile, strikes a pose, and admits his words made her blush. Lyra keeps talking, chin up, bragging that she's the group's scout. She makes sure their escort stays safe, sniffs out traps, and handles all the recon work. Kilfa can't stop grinning as he adds that she fights with a bow and dagger. Shurev bursts out, "That's amazing," and lets out a confident laugh like he's saying, "I've still got more to show you." Lyra stares back, dead serious, then smirks that she's the best at bolting away too. The cat flings his arms like, "Yeah, you didn't even need to say it." The guild leader snaps his hands together and demands, "Are we leaving?" Then he locks eyes with Shuru, asking if he's ready. Shuru blazes back, "I'm ready." Lyra grins at the young man's upbeat voice and tells him, "We're headed for the eastern forest." And it struts right up to the bar. She hesitates at the door. Then a drunken man stumbles to his feet and strides right toward her. He locks eyes on her like it's deja vu, reaches for the little girl's face and tells her, "As I promised." Right as he stepped in, the door slammed shut behind him. So tell me, who isn't watching those fierce, unwavering stares from his brand new crew? The monk warrior Rolf, the sorceress Nesca, Scout Kilfa, and the fearless leader of the warrior Lyre tore into the moment like they owned it. He looks back on the road he just started and prays nothing disastrous is about to hit. Kilfa and the lead push the group into single file, marching along a razor-thin forest path, eyes sharp and every sense on high alert. The young man's nerves are on edge, but Lyre clocks it instantly, eases him with a calm promise that they'll dodge monster encounters as much as they can. And you can practically hear his shoulders drop as he nods, relieved and grateful, while they keep walking. Lyra groans in the comments, complaining that hunting herbs is the most boring grind. Kilfur fires back that he's already bagged a bunch, but Rolf cuts in, warning that the real herbs are rare and way harder to track down, and the monk then pushes on that once they finally get the right ones, they'll finish the job. But he frets and Nesca blurts that night is creeping in fast. Lyra pauses, thinking hard for a. He decides to camp right where he stands, and Shuru blinks in surprise, asking if it's really not too early to start. The warrior grins and tells him, "Every adventurer has to rest whenever he can, because that rule keeps you alive." With tears streaming down his face, Shuru can't believe it. He only wishes he'd heard this from his old boss. Then Lyra snaps into action and orders them to get the camp ready. Shara and Kulfa haul in wood, and Rolf swings his axe and starts dropping trees. Lyra strikes the flames with the matches he snagged, grinning as he tells Shuru they're insanely useful. The cleric leans in and says they're genuinely thankful for the sponsorship. And he was laughing about how he could rake in a fortune by selling those liar jokes in the capital. Shuru leans in, totally locked on, and Rolf nods, then drops the warning. If that notorious merchant association catches wind of it, Shuru's in deep trouble. Lyra bursts out laughing and claims the cleric's hunches are almost always dead right. Shuru can't believe how spot-on it all is. Nesco marches up, groaning that he's starving, and Lyra nods like it's finally time. She calls the group to the food because they've been trudging all day. Shuru stares in shock as the sorceress tears into a piece of bread like it's nothing. He studies the menu, just hard bread and dried meat, and you can practically see him wondering how on earth even seasoned adventurers survive out in the wild on food this plain. Killua locks eyes with him and asks, "Did you eat yet?" Then she rips off a chunk of meat with her teeth and shoves it right into his hands. Shuro refuses her thanks, smirks, and says he came prepared. Then he starts unzipping his backpack. Lyre leans in, all curious, while Rolf's jaw drops hard when Shuru yanks those packages from the back because he can't wrap his head around it. The group's leader just stares like, "Food, here." And everyone flips into stunned silence at the canned goods, instant noodles, and a mountain of cookies. Mesta gulps nervously while Lyre blurts out if Shuru's really about to devour it all alone. Then Shiro shoots back that he brought food for everyone, and the whole group goes wide-eyed in shock. But Scherer leans in and says he's testing brand new stuff for his shop, and he needs their honest opinions. Then they both stop for a beat. Liar declares those are just free samples, and the whole crew erupts in celebration. Then everyone snatches a treat and dives in at once. Liar snatches the raiment, and Killfoot chomps down on a rice cake. Rolf nibbles a tiny bread roll, pops a few Nesca bites into his mouth, and then takes a chocolate bar bite. Everyone is stunned by how insane the flavors are. Shiro watches them closely, and once they finish tasting, he sees pure joy light up everyone's face. Killfoot sinks down with a full belly, and Mesca tears into the sweets, bowing as she swears she'll never forget that chocolate taste. While Rolf grips a crucifix tight, tears spilling as he insists it's a divine gift. They're out cold, sleeping like nothing's wrong. Nesca even mumbles chocolate in her dreams. Then the liar creeps up to Shiro and tells him, right to his face, that he should finally get some rest too. Shiro admits he's not used to turning in early, and Lyra swoops in, inviting him to talk. The young man stares into his own reflection inside his cup of tea and spots it. These adventurers aren't using sleeping bags at all. Liar shrugs it off and tells him it's so they can move fast the moment danger shows up. He tucks the sorceress in with a blanket and grins, saying that in winter one just won't cut it. Sure, add more warmth, but now you've got extra weight to lug. He lets out a heavy sigh and says that in moments like this, he really wishes he had some kind of storage ability. Then he chokes on his tea the second the words hit. He blurts out a question about spatial storage, and Lara snaps back that it's a freakishly rare gift. Only one person in every 100,000 has it. He blurts out that an ancient dungeon holds a book packed with this skill, and Shiro tries to mask his shock, only to realize that book might be his. He grabbed the warrior and demanded, "If we find it, what's it gonna be worth?" Later blinks at the question like it's weird, then pauses and admits, if it could hold the same value as a carriage, he'd have more than enough to buy himself a mansion. Shiro's face drains of color as he admits it all makes sense. Liar just laughs and says it's more than he'll ever even scrape together in his whole life. The merchant exhales, grateful his secret's safe, then grins, because he's going to push his limits later. Shore claims he's heading to sleep, but Lyra suddenly senses danger in the air. He yanks his sword free. Shiro's eyes go wide as she blurts out what's happening, but Lyra shuts her down with a hard signal, silence. He jolts Kilfa and Rolf awake, then turns to Shiro and demands she rouse the sorcerers. The leader feels something closing in and instantly snaps, "Get ready," because a monster is seconds away from tearing into them. A sorceress grumbles in her sleep about chocolates, and Shiro shakes her awake, snapping, "Stop dreaming about sweets. This is an emergency." Nesca jolts awake, blinking hard, still wearing that same cold, emotionless face, while Kilfa sniffs the air like something. Off, and Liar clocks it at once, asking if she caught a signal. A scout knits her brows and snaps, "This is bad." She's certain the monster's lurking downwind because she isn't smelling a thing. Rolf's eyes narrow. That means it's smart. Then Lara grabs Nesca and shouts, "Spell now." Still half asleep, she stares at him. But before she can even process it, a thunderous crash slams into the moment and cuts off the conversation. The warrior snaps his head around in shock, throws himself into a fighting stance, and his eyes go wide as the figure closes in, because it's a gigantic killer bear. Lara studies the whole situation and tells them straight up, even if they tried, a silver-ranked team could never take it down. Still, he can't stop. He just feels a bone-deep chill as he gapes at the creature's monstrous size. The leader keeps pushing that the only real play is to run, but Rolf snaps him mid-sentence. Fleeing isn't possible either. Kilfil is the only one who might slip away, thanks to her feline race. The cat folds her arms and declares she'll never ditch her friends. The cleric snaps back that even if they clash, they won't walk away victorious, and the scout squeals in raw fear. While Lyra stays ice calm, the bear growls and coils up to strike. He's stuck wondering what they should do next, and Rolf answers with a grim seriousness. Someone's got to go serve up his bait. The leader nods and the whole crew swallows hard. Panic tightens the air until it crackles. Shiro treats the whole mess like a pop quiz and starts digging for the bait. A, him. B, the new guy who just joined today. C, the one who's apparently a legit adventurer even if he says it with a straight face. He lets out a heavy sigh because deep down he knows whichever way he turns, the bait is still going to hook him. And right then, Lyra reaches out and taps his shoulder. Shiro accepts his fate like he's bracing for impact, already sure someone's about to apologize for tossing him in as bait for the group's sake. But the leader's answer slams him with shock. Liar snaps that he must run with Nesca and Kilfo while he and Rolf draw the monster's attention, and Shiru just stands there, stunned and speechless. Liar rushes to apologize to Rolf, but the cleric just grins and waves it off, saying it's been a long journey and there's nothing to worry about. Rolf is thrown off by their choice, and right before he can even answer. Nesca strides forward and declares she'll fight too. Then the warrior cuts in, barking that someone as slow as her would only end up in the way. He even jokes that he just wants to look cool to her before he's gone, and Lyra smiles at the sorceress, urging her to really understand. Nesca glares down and calls him an idiot, and the warrior braces himself, yelling at Rolf to keep a healing spell locked and loaded. As long as he doesn't get erased in one hit, the cleric just has to pray and send him off with luck. Rolf nods, all grit and determination. Liar tells them, "I'm setting a trap. Once it snaps shut, you all run, don't wait." In that exact moment, Kilfa's eyes blew wide open. She snapped, warning that something is creeping up from behind, and Liar just couldn't bring herself to believe it. But the second he stares into the dark forest, the truth slams into him. They're boxed in by two killer bears, and the beastly war's echo is closing in. Nesca stumbled back as the leader roared for her and Kilfa to get ready to run, and Rolf stepped in, promising they'd hold the line. But Nesca's hands shook as she refused, insisting there was no escaping and they were going to die right there. Monsters come storming in, trapping the group from every side. Then his heart starts pounding, and right in that moment, his grandmother's voice bursts back into his mind, telling him that even when despair claws at your soul, you still can't quit. He tears through his backpack in a rush, and Liar clocks it instantly, then Shock blurts, "What are you doing?" The warrior screams at him to run, but Shuru snaps his focus forward, refusing to move as he squares up to the killer bear. Fueled by pure determination, he hurls the weapon at the beast, and the monster freezes on the spot, muscles locking tight, because right then the explosives hang in midair, seconds from detonating. As the fireworks burst overhead, the beast freezes mid-roar, and the whole crew stares in total shock. Then Shuru bolts straight for the monster, seizing the moment. He shouted that the bear would regret stepping into his path. He doesn't hesitate. He yanks out a spray and blasts it straight into the animal's face. Just as the bear hesitates to launch its attack, Liar screams a warning, because the monster is gearing up to strike him from behind. Yeah, it whips around fast and blasts again, spraying the creature with even more chaos. As he stares at the can, pure shock hits. He can't believe how well it works. Curious, he steps in close, then calls him out, asking if that was some kind of magic. But he shares his smiles and casually says it's nothing, just a special item. He pops the can open and reveals the truth. Inside, a deadly poison waits to burst free the moment the package seal gets broken. The merchants push them toward the opening, urging them to bolt before they're caught. But Liar barrels in and demands, did the poison hit its eyes and nose? If it did, she says, then this is a golden opening they absolutely can't waste. The moment they get it, the whole crew locks in, then launches into an all-out attack. After a brutal, non-stop battle that left everyone breathless, they finally break free and pull off the win, then explode into cheers right there in the middle of the forest, celebrating their victory over the monsters. Liar snaps that it's time to chop the bear's meat and quit being lazy about it. Right then, Sherba pounces on the moment, teasing Liar and asking if he'd ever fallen for Nesca. The warrior's eyes went wide as the sorcerers erupted into full-blown panic. Their cheeks flushed red as they blurted, mortified, asking what Shiro could possibly mean by that. Then it all clicked back. Lyra once said he wanted to look cool in front of a scared girl. The group leader just shrugged, trying to shut the topic down before it got any worse. As the crew hauls in meat and other raw materials, because the market pays big, Rolf steps up, carves into the monsters, and orders the companions to peel off the skin and strip the meat. Kilfa, all curiosity, points at the claws and asks what they'd do with the bear's lower parts. Then the cleric shrugs and says the testicles can be turned into medicine. So he orders her to cut them off, and Shuru gets hit with that horrifying, life-scrambling trauma on the spot. Lyra races up to Shuru. With a hard, serious stare, he asks if he can say something crucial, then orders him to shut down the herb collection and come straight back to the city. He jabs at the dead bear and snaps that the merchant would want to haul the materials back fast, before everything spoils, because there are way more than just a pile of high-level herbs. To let the shock land, Lyra blurts out that half the spoils are his, because she wants him to know he earned them too. If that item hadn't shown up in the young man's hands, they'd all be dead already. Now he grips a spray can and says it's got to cost a fortune. But Shiri leans in and tells him, forget everything else. What matters most is that everyone's still alive. The merchant's words hit the liar, and he grins, darts around, and heaps praise on Chiru's generosity. Meanwhile, Kilfa freezes for a split second, then slams into him out of nowhere, shouting that he's an amazing guy. Shiori slips out of the hug, Kilfa rockets headfirst into a bush, and Nesca and the merchant just stare as it all goes down. The sorceress nods along and says she, too, believes Shiryu is a genuinely good person. Then Rolf chimes in that the world would be a brighter place if more merchants like him existed. Still mortified, Shrew sidesteps the moment, then turns to Lyre and admits he gets why they have to head back to the city. He steps up and offers to lug the killer bear's materials for them. Lyre bursts into laughter, straight up questioning whether Shiro's got the muscles to back it up. Right before he can even speak again, Shiro slams his spatial storage power and rips a hole in the fabric of reality, leaving everyone frozen in total shock. And when Shiro clocks their faces, he blurts an apology for not telling them about his ability sooner. Lyre snaps out of the shock, tells him it's totally fine, and that's when they go right on lying to him. As Shura gets ready to bolt, Lyre cuts in fast, pointing out that if he can stash the materials, then they should power straight through and finish the mission. Before Shuru can even protest, they yank him straight into the adventure, 2 more days, no exceptions. Just before they finally roll back into the city, Ina lights up with pure joy, thrilled to be reunited with Shuru. Lyre leans in, all curious, and demands to know if she's Shira's daughter, then snaps back fast, saying she's only the shop's assistant. The warrior flashes a polite smile, takes the shot key from Sure hands, and tells Aina to stay right there. After that, the crew barrels straight for the Silver Mood Guild to finish their mission, until the moment they swing the door open. They stumble on Emil sprawled on the floor, tears streaming, begging a man for more time. She needs it to gather the money. Shiro thought the mission would go smoothly, but then, one look at what happened, he couldn't help but get hooked. The man erupts at the mill, screaming that she's been repeating the same excuse for months. And this time, he's done forgiving her because he's waited far too long. Shiro turns to Lyre and demands, "Who is that?" And the warrior snaps back, "That's Gerald, a materials merchant and a close friend of the guild's former master." The young man strides up to him, introduces himself, and asks if he can steal a moment to talk, because he needs to get the full picture of what's going on. Gerald tips his hat, steps forward, and says, "Name S. Gerald, nice to meet you." He bragged that he'd loaned the guild 10 gold coins, and when the debts hit, he demanded the guild building as collateral. He thrusts the paper forward, the contract for the Silver Moon Guild, while Mel bows her head in silence. While the man snarls that if he doesn't get his money, he'll seize the property. He tells them that it's not just the building. The land around it counts as part of the property too, and if he sells it, he'll get every dollar of his investment back. Gerald snaps and orders Emil to grab the deed right now. But she digs in her heels and flat-out refuses, insisting she won't do it under any circumstances. Then the man presses her, asking why she's clinging to her duty after the guild has left her totally stranded, and he tells her without sugarcoating it that she should just quit because there's no hope left. Mel lifts her face, eyes locked in a serious stare, and says this isn't only duty. She stays there because it's the truth she needs, while Shuru and Lyre watch with aching worry. Then she confesses that for a half-breed everyone hated, the Silver Moon Guild was the very first place that ever made her feel like she fit into something bigger. She flashes back on everything, every good day and every bad one, and admits that somehow the happy moments still crush the sad ones. Then with a soft but determined warmth, she vows she'll never let it disappear, no matter what. And the moment he sees her react, Shiru's mind snaps back to something crucial. 5 years ago, his whole family packed into his grandmother's place, because 2 years earlier she'd vanished without a trace, and everyone still felt the shock in their bones. Shira can't remember every detail, but he still hears his mom's voice in his head. She'd been thinking about selling the house, because keeping it just didn't add up anymore. The moment those words hit his ears, the young man dropped to his knees at her feet. He begged her not to sell it because that house was packed with his grandmother's memories, and the second the relatives saw him act like that, the shame hit him hard. Everyone else stared in total shock. Shiru strides forward, ready to step in, and the Lyre blurts out in shock, "Wait, what do you plan to do right now?" Gerald cuts in and tells Emil, "No matter what you feel, a contract is a contract. You still have to honor it." Without a hint of emotion, Emil answers, "I understand," and snatches the property deed from a drawer, ready to shove it into her hands, before she can even pass the papers. Shiru cuts her off on the spot and blurts out, "Could you buy something right now?" He lifts the killer bear's hide and jar, and the Jarl's eyes go wide with shock, because he instantly spots the rare material. Even the hide's color screams, "This is rarer than you think." The moment he spots it, and the merchant blurts out begging to buy it, but Shuri snaps back with a quick apology and refuses because that hide belongs to the guild. Emil snaps that she doesn't have the money to grab the material yet, but then she reassures them she'll pay as soon as she can, no stress at all. Lyra can't help but be moved. Shuru always shows his kind heart, pushes forward with pure determination, and even offers the same materials so she can follow his lead. The warrior says with a grin that you can pay back later, because the milk can's the real deal. And the girls, still stammering, gladly take both favors at once, eyes shining with pure excitement and instant relief. Gerald whirls on Emil and demands she hand over the hide for 32 gold coins, but she shuts him down with a hard no. She grimaces and demands a fair 36 instead, and the merchant's throat tightens as he nervously weighs the price. Once the negotiation wrapped up, every last debt of the guild got wiped clean, and Emil still had 26 gold coins in his pocket, plus he sold the bear's balls for 2 more, so the Silver Moon Guild suddenly had 28 coins to work with. Gerald grins as he says his goodbyes, completely satisfied, then tells them he can't wait for the next negotiation in. Emil was still on borrowed time. This was his final chance. The girl bows deeply and with a grateful smile, thanks him for coming through. And the whole crew fires back that her thanks belong with Shirov, because they only did what any real adventurers would do. Right after that, Lyra blurts out that they're still waiting on the mission to wrap up, and Emil instantly freezes, stunned by what she just said. She whips around to Shiru and fires off the question, is he here for the mission too? Emil impatiently snaps at the young man, telling him to get lost, because his business there is already done. The liar blurts, the mission is to protect me, so you stay. But the girl throws her arms up and insists, I'm fine, so drop it, trying to slam the whole argument shut before it drags on. The warrior drives in close, demanding whether she spent the mission's money, and the mill stammers, panicking, swearing she never, ever do something like that. Liar pushes for the payment right now, and the group digs in, demanding all 30 silver coins for the job they just did. Sure, he's intrigued by the number, but Liar snaps back that they can't undercharge because this was a serious, important task. The young man shoots back, that's not the issue. So he forked over 100 silver coins and straight up asks the guild if those extra 70 coins were really charged. The two lock eyes. Mill tries to slip away, but Liar spots her in an instant and snaps her back, demanding answers. With a sharp flick of her staff, the sorceress rips open a glowing magical circle and snarls that she'll burn the rabbit girl alive, while Kilfur crosses his arms, grinding his teeth at the whole mess. Even Rolf gives off a pulse-pounding, scary aura that makes the air feel heavy. Liar snaps his fingers and fires back, saying he'll never forgive her for what she did. The crew swarms the guild master, and he bolts in pure panic, trying to outrun their fury, while Shuru lets out a shaky sigh of relief. He tells himself he dodged a bullet by not bringing Aina. Then he thanks his lucky stars for stumbling on this hidden corner of the mill. Shore finally comes back to the shop, and Anna greets him while she's cleaning the stairs, and the moment she sees him, she perks up and asks what it was like being an adventurer. He grins and says it was incredible, then leans in and asks if she wants to hear every detail of his journey. The girl beams with excitement, and he jumps right in, spilling every single thing that went down. By the end, he admits those days were awful, but Anna lights up and cheers his bravery for taking down a killer bear. Flushed with embarrassment, Shiro blurted out that the Azure Flash crew was the real team that brought the bear down. He only lent a hand. The girl shot back that if he hadn't shown up, they'd all have been wiped out. Then boom, someone slammed on the door and yelled his name like it couldn't wait. The moment he swings the door open, there's Karen, right there, staring him in the face. Before he can even react, she pounces into a hug and shoves his face right between her chest. With tears streaming, the mayor grabs him and asks, "Are you okay?" She'd heard he had to face a bear on the mission. The young man's breath starts to fail, and Inna steps in fast, warning Karen that he can't breathe right. Panicked, the mayor clutches his throat like it's been smashed, then yanks Shuro free fast so she can finally breathe. He steadies himself and tells her, "Stay calm," because the adventurers saved him. And Karen's huge relief hits the moment she hears it's true. Once she's a little more composed, she fires off. "So, how'd the mission go? And did you score anything good on your trip with the Azure Flash?" Shura says yes, and adds that if the stock hits on time, everyone's going to be dying to see it, because he's praying he can blow them away with the new products. With a calm, straight face, the mayor echoes him and slips in, "You don't have to keep hiding what you're really up to anymore." She steps in close, presses her lips near his ear, and whispers about his storage power, then asks the big question, what if it's not a skill at all, but a special item? Shiro's face drains of color and he scrambles to cover it up, blurting out what Karen even means. But Karen only grins and says he can't lie. She tells him it's a rare power, yet she's met others who had it, and that's exactly how she figured it out. And then she says it. Ever since the very first time she laid eyes on Shiro, she could smell it on him. Trapped with nowhere to run, the young man finally admits she was right, and he even asks whether it was that feminine intuition at work. Then the mayor snaps back. It didn't happen, because she already tricked him into admitting it, turning his own words into proof. She blurts that she doesn't even know anyone else with this power and confesses the real shock. She just couldn't understand why he came in with a huge pile of matches from the very start. It takes just a few seconds to kick in, then it snaps into action and screams, utterly stunned. Karen bursts out laughing, then pats his shoulder and warns him that in the real commercial world, honesty doesn't always show up, so he needs to guard his information. The young guy hangs his head, admits he messed up, and promises to stay sharper from here on out so he never repeats the same mistake. Karen leans in and asks what new stuff she's about to sell, and Anna grins like, honestly, I'm dying to know that too. With a mysterious air, Shiro slowly unrolls the item like it's hiding a secret. Leaving the mayor stunned that something like this could even be real, Karen slips out soon after. Then she starts sharing stretches, celebrating like they just pulled off a win after 3 straight days of success. Right then, Liar bursts into the shop with Shiro, asks the merchant how things are going after the mission. And before the merchant can even answer, Neska slips in behind him and waves in with a discreet, friendly gesture. The warrior gushes about how insanely well the shop is run, how fast everything got handled. Then he drops the truth. It was Aina who organized every single thing in just the last few days. He watches them for a second, then clocks it. The sorceress is quietly tugging at Liar's sleeve, all shy and nervous. And when Shiro realizes they've started dating, joy lights up his face with a tiny sting of envy tucked right behind it. Lyra blurts out that Emmy told her the city is about to get a visit from a big shot from an adventurer's guild, and the merchant backs it up right away. Lyra insists he's hoping it's a legit guild, but Shiro can't shake the suspicion his words spark, so he immediately grills the adventurer, asking if any guilds out there are running dirty. Lyra shoots back, yep, even the big, high-level guilds can get a rotten reputation. The warrior grins and names the Fang of the Venom Dragon and Devil's Trident, then drops the bomb. The worst of the worst is the Labyrinth Marauders. Nesta nods along, and Anna's face goes wide with shock. She snaps back to it. That's the guild name Karen dropped earlier, and the whole room goes dead silent. Then Shiro leans in and demands, did the mayor know about that guild's dark reputation? Liar shoots back, maybe I did. Even if he's an adventurer, pulling that kind of info out of a tiny town is brutally hard. Yeah, it's like this world has no phones or social networks at all, so people probably don't even get the info fast. So he spirals over whether what's coming in that guild will mess everything up, and all he can do is pray Karen stays safe, and that it all ends well. Anna sniffs out the guild rep's delay and asks if he got lost on the way, and Shura just smirks with a calm face, saying maybe he's slow-walking like he's got nowhere to be. Those robes from the other city look perfectly straight, but maybe they're not. Still, Karen has been planted at the city entrance since the day before, and when the kid blurts that it'd be best if he shows up soon, Shuru nods right along. Right on cue, a bell shrills and the afternoon lands, telling Anna they're done for the day. She waves him off with that same bright smile, and he just stands there with the key in his hand, thinking it's still kind of early because he's already decided to lock up the shop. Before he even locks the door, he hears knocks scratching the wood. Then the door swings open, and there she is. A long-haired girl in a uniform, gripping 2 swords, eyes steady and serious. She speaks politely, apologizes for the delay, and asks for the item. Shurva tells her to go for it, then he snatches open a matchbox in a flash. The girl stares, hooked, and he urges her to light up and try it herself. Her eyes spark with pure excitement as she blurts that she's heard rumors about this product, and that it sounds absolutely unreal. Then she jabs a finger at the next package and asks Shiro what it is, and he tells her it's a survival blanket, made to fend off the cold and take the place of regular blankets. The young man tucks the girl into the blanket, and as he does, he flashes back to the day the adventurers and the mayor couldn't stop staring when they saw it for the first time. The girl's eyes light up as she smiles in amazement, saying that even though she's slim, that blanket still feels warm and snug. Then she jabs a finger at the next item, itching to know what it's for. Sheriff tells her it's a collapsible water bottle, and while she hangs on every word, he whips through a few more products to show her exactly how they work. Finally, she thanks him for the explanation, but then snaps that she's gotta go. She's late for an appointment. So she says goodbye in a rush and bolts, leaving Shuru totally hooked and curious. A few days later, Ine bursts into the shop yelling Shuru's name, and the moment the young man sees her furious face, he instantly freezes, then blurts, "What happened?" Meanwhile, Karen strides through the city when a stranger steps up and demands to know if she's the mayor, his voice hard and his stance looming like a threat. The man snaps his name and claims he's an inspector from the capital's Adventurers Guild, and Karen immediately gets chills when she senses trouble. Shuru and Ine bolt toward the meeting point, while the young man braces for the moment he's been waiting for, only to realize they've dragged him here way too soon. They were supposed to tour the city and the market first, then bring him to Shuru's shop, but the second they reach the spot, the young man's jaw drops at what they find. Anna bursts out that the mayor needs him, right now. The moment he steps into the Silver Moon Guild, he spots Karen and Mill, plus the Azure Flash adventurers. Everyone stands there with stone-cold faces. Then a mysterious figure keeps his back to him, and Shuru can't help wondering if that's the inspector. Karen slides up close and hisses that he's a handful, begging him, no matter what nasty thing the man blurts out, not to snap. Shiro catches it all. The mayor's hands are shaking. Still, the young man flashes a calm smile, like he's dealt with fools before and won't back down, not even if everything goes sideways. Karen exhales in relief, then pivots to introduce Shuru to the guild inspector from the capital, Gabas. She tries to sound steady, but her words crack with tension. And then the mayor declares, loud and proud, that Shuru is the city's pride. Then he steps up and introduces himself, right there with Anna. Gabas lets out a heavy sigh, muttering that he expected a real professional. Then the merchant glares at Aina and mocks her and snaps that the young man just hired some green kid. Aina recoils in fear, while Shuru clamps on a forced smile, fighting to keep his rage from spilling out. Gabba spun his head around, grumbled about the Silver Moon Guild, and called the whole place disgusting. Then snapped that demi-humans couldn't even manage basic cleaning. Mel explodes in anger and snaps back that she cleans every single day with her free time. But the inspector sneers and shoots back, asking if she's really sure it's clean. Karen watches it all with hatred tightly locked inside her chest. As Gavis keeps yelling that demi-humans who can't work shouldn't even exist, Kulfa and Emil shake with fury, until the mayor cuts in fast, spins the topic, and asks if Gavis wants to check out Shiro's products. The man stares at the matches, and for the very first time, real awe hits him. He points out that at least this item is good quality, and Karen's face lights up with a hopeful smile. But then Gabas snaps the matchstick onto the ground, plops down like it doesn't matter, and declares he's going to open a branch of the Labyrinth Marauders right in the city. Karen can't believe her eyes as Emil tears into him for tossing a matchstick into the guild, but he just shrugs off every complaint and keeps moving. Then the inspector lays down his terms. His guild is the only one allowed in this whole city, and every other operation gets shut down right now. He fixes his stare on the center and demands she speak up about that pathetic, tiny guild. Then the rabbit girl fires back. It's called Silver Moon. But Gabba cuts her off with a cold, dismissive shrug and says none of it matters, because the best move is to shut the whole guild down. Rage boils in Mill as she surges toward him again, while a Karen grabs her and hauls her back once more. Then the inspector keeps talking, insisting on full tax exemption, claiming that in this little city there's no real profit and he'll still need the resources to build the new guild. Finally, he barges in and demands full control of the match sale, declaring that every last box from Shiro's shop is his now. Then he slaps a few boxes onto the table with a smug grin. Shiro just stares at him, totally lost about what he's up to, while Gavis leans in and grills the young man, demanding to know if he's really a merchant. Then slams him with insults, calling him an idiot and a fool. The inspector steps in even closer and admits he's trying to buy up every last bit of the store's match stock. Karen lunges in to stop it, but he snaps his head toward her with a smug stare and barks, "So, what do you want?" The mayor snaps back that she can't buy into those exclusive sales, even if it's dressed up as growth for the city, and Gabas just laughs at how naive she is. He tells them Ninorich can't trade much because it's miles from the big cities. But then he grins and says his guild can haul those goods all the way across the entire kingdom. That greedy grin practically screams, "All I want is profits." Shiro crossed his arms and called the offer interesting, then shut it down hard. No way he was selling out because he had a stock limit, and he wouldn't hand everything to just one guild. Karen lets out a heavy sigh and says, "Then there's no way we can take that branch in the city." Gubba's face contorts with pure rage, and in a blind fury he snatches a glass bottle. He freezes it at Karen at the last second, missing her by inches, then snaps into a rage, screaming that they don't know who he is and that the city's guild is already doomed to fail. Liar watches it all go down and his blood boils. Shiro sucked in a deep breath, stepped in, and told them to hold up for a second. There were monsters and rare herbs lurking in the woods near the city, making that spot worth something big, and even adventurers were already using the city as their home base. Gaba bursts into laughter at his words, then closes in fast, snatches Shiro by the tie and roars, "You're a fool." He laughed at the city's adventurers, calling them weak and talentless, and said only the capital or other big hubs could pay off big, so they hunted for spots with almost no competition. Neska's rage flares up, but Liar snaps a gesture and tells her to calm down. Her aura keeps swelling, and the air around her instantly feels heavier for everyone. Gavis goes off, calling this value straight up ridiculous, and it has the mayor and the mill steaming. Then he hammers Shiro and demands, "So what are you doing about it?" Because opening a branch in Minorich clearly helps the city, not your excuses. The fate of this place now rests on Shiro's shoulders. Then the young man begs for a moment to think, but Gabas cuts him off fast, insisting there's absolutely no time left. Then the inspector flashes a wicked smirk and jabs a finger at Anna, taunting that if Shiro takes the deal, he can finally hire someone actually qualified, dumping the little girl for good. The young man goes still for a heartbeat, then snaps back with a cold, "Say it, what did you just say?" Gabas thinks he's finally broken him and repeats it, grinning as he claims he'll swap that worthless brat and the filthy demihumans for real workers. Right then, Shiro snaps. Every ounce of rage he's been swallowing erupts into one brutal punch, slamming Gaba clean in the face and whipping him back, stumbling hard. Shiro roars in pure fury, and before anyone can even react, he barrels straight at him as the whole crowd freezes in shock. During the argument, Shira suddenly gets hit with that eerie deja vu like she's lived it all before. Just like the day he walked out of that company, his boss kept needling Shiro, the new guy who admired him, until Shiro snapped and lost control. Gubba's words hit like the same ones his young master's old boss used to spit, right before everything went out of control. With a savage shout, he threw a thunderous punch, and the inspector rocketed through the air like a missile. Azure Flash's members gawk in shock as the mill starts glowing like it's been bewitched. Karen steps in and Shiro blurts out, asking if Gabas did something weird to her, yet the mayor pauses, caught off guard. Then Embarrass finally admits he touched her inappropriately, and Shiro's face instantly turns cold and grim. Rage flares as he yanks Jevis up by the hair, while Karen pleads for him to stop, insisting it's no longer necessary. And right then, the cleric Rolf barrels in, shouting to the young man, and sure, the guy stops for a second, but Rolf only offers help, so the young man nods and keeps hauling the inspector along. He remembers exactly what he did when he quit. Then, with Rolf's help, he grabs Gabas and slams him upside down onto the guild's counter. The impact hits, and the whole floor starts shaking like it's about to break apart. The sheriff stands his ground and declares he hates violence, but he won't let anyone mock his employee or try to take advantage of the mayor. Karen and Ine are so touched their eyes brim with tears. The young man drives in another kick, snarling that Gabas isn't good enough to keep quiet while this is happening. Anna barrels toward him and wraps him in a tight hug, tears blazing in her eyes. Gabais went berserk at Kitsap, screaming that he'll swear vengeance on the entire city. He brags that he runs the Labyrinth Marauders and dares everyone to challenge him. But Karen glares him down and snaps whether he really wants to declare war on her city. The mayor keeps going, warning that if it ever comes to that, she'll storm straight to the ruler of Marcus Basher's territory and make sure they know everything. The inspector's face drains of color. He stammers, then scrambles backward like he's trying to talk his way out. The inspector pushes hard for priority in the match sales, then warns that if they do, he'll shut out everything that happened, even if it means yanking his ear so fiercely it hurts, and tells him point-blank that his ears are plugged, because he's clearly not hearing right. The young man refused to sell, shot him a warning, and promised that if he tried anything, he'd wipe out his guild, while Karen and the adventurers watched, locked in and determined. Sure shouts, begging like, "Do you get it?" And Gavis Neal is straight up pleading for a price. But the young man shoots back that from now on, he'll be way more picky about who he does business with. Gaba steers the conversation to bargaining for the guild's branch, but Karen just shrugs and flat-out rejects it again. Liar bursts into laughter, taunting Gaba's greed and gloating that it left him with nothing. Then the inspector snaps at him to shut up. Still seething, Gaba hurls insults at Liar and calls him a weak adventurer. And the warrior snatches him by the collar, growling that it's smarter to shut up right now. Shiro begs him to stay away from violence, but the man fights back, claiming the young guy hit him first. McGibbs hit us with a kick and then slammed, "You're worthless." The warrior jabs his finger toward the capital, and Gabas storms off, crawling away with pure fury. Liar, Emil, and Rolf refuse to stop there. They insist they're not satisfied with just that. The mayor steps in, tells them to let it go, and then turns her eyes on Shuru, silently begging for his backing. Suddenly, knock, knock. The door rattles and Liar snaps out of his focus, already fuming like Gabas has come storming back. But when he swings the door open, there she is, the girl who came to Shure's shop. She asks for permission and drops the bomb. She already knew the mayor was here, so that's why she suddenly showed up. Koren swings in and introduces herself, then straight up asks who she is like she's determined to pin her down. The girl introduces herself as Namaraj, a messenger from the guild Fairy's Blessing. And the moment Liar's eyes hear that name, they blow wide open, because he snaps that it's the biggest guild in the whole country. Koren leans in and demands to know why he's here. She grins and tells him she's ready to open a whole new guild branch in Nineric. With a sharp, determined stare, she says she's come to ask for a favor, and Nay keeps her face calm while Koren squints at her like a hawk, demanding to know if she really plans to open a branch of the guild in the city. While Shuru blocks the view, Emil peeks out and snaps that this is nothing but a trap, just a concerned friend disguise. Then Nay blinks for a split second. Suddenly she spun around, snatched Emil's hands, and demanded to know if she worked at the guild, her eyes blazing with excitement. The rabbit girl jolted, but before she could answer, Nay stepped in and said she needed to talk to her too. Then Nay promised that if the Silver Moon Guild joined in, Emil's salary would jump way up. Nay shoots her hand up over her head and swears she's fighting for a massive raise, and Mel tracks every inch of that motion with her eyes. Then her heart starts pounding. Wide-eyed, the rabbit girl blurts out if her pay will really jump, and Nye answers instantly. Yes, she'll make 5 times more. That confident smile says there's no joke here. The mill jolts back on instinct, yanking away in a split second. Then it happens all over again. She hits her knees in front of Nye, then declares that the Silver Moon Guild will become a branch of Fairy's Blessing, her voice shaking with pure, overwhelming emotion. She lunges for Naya's legs and pleads with the mayor to let her decide. Koren just stands there, shell-shocked, unable to believe her ears, and after a brief pause, the mayor finally decides to ask Shura what she thinks. The young man crosses his arms and snaps that they should hear Nay's proposal first, before anyone decides. Koren instantly nods and ushers them to her office, where everyone gathers to talk it through. With a steaming cup of tea in hand, the mayor leaned in and demanded that Knight spill why she made that choice. Nye then bursts the news. Days earlier, a band of adventurers stumbled on a dungeon, and inside they found a strange map, one that shows a whole continent no one has ever recorded. Nye insists that map could be the work of some ancient civilization. This magic-savvy civilization could be the discovery that blows the whole world wide open, like the century's biggest find. Her gaze snaps to Shuru and Koren, and the smile vanishes, replaced by a hard, serious stare. The moment of truth hits. This map says the forest east of the city hides ancient sites, maybe even lost kingdoms. Nay rips the map open across the table and plants her hands on it like she's about to uncover something huge. Koren's eyes go wide as she blurts out, "Wait, no way is this really true," pure shock flooding her voice. Meg affirmed with iron confidence, saying the labyrinth marauders had already set their sights on the city, because they planned to seize the ruins and lock everyone else out. She snatches up a tiny figurine, slams it to the table, and lets it crash like proof of their humiliating failure. Because they tried to barge in anyway, only to get shut down by the inspector's impossible, totally unreasonable demands. Mai grins and tells them that unlike the labyrinth marauders, her guild actually wanted to team up with the city, so they could explore those ruins the fair way. After digging through every detail, they finally agreed. This city was the perfect launch point for the mission, and the real clincher was one key advantage. Curiously, Sherwood presses, "What makes this city so special?" And the answer hits hard. It's all because Silver Moon Guild is here, the only one in the whole region. If they can swallow the local guild whole, they'll turn it into a fresh branch of Fairy's Blessing. No new building to waste time on, and they can kick off the exploration immediately. And then there was Shiro's shop. Nay's eyes snapped to it like a magnet. His products were absolutely insane, exactly what the new operation needed to level up fast. With a sly smile, she bows to Shuru and begs him to open a branch inside the guild, and Koren's nerves snap. She gulps hard, staring at her with sheer worry. Suspicious as hell, the mayor presses her for Nye's terms, what she'll demand in return for planting the guild branch in the city, and her voice answers like stone. The girl's face twists in confusion and embarrassment as Shiro lays out exactly what Gabus did. Nezai's face twists with raw indignation as every demand gets piled onto him, even after he's been granted permission to open the guild branch. Shiro says the inspector didn't just question him. He insulted him too, and Karen chimes in with how the harassment she endured never stopped. Gabus was absolutely despicable, and Nay was still shaking with disbelief. She called it unforgivable, yet she pushed Karen to stay calm, saying Mill had given her consent so they wouldn't have to build a whole new headquarters. They'd still need a safe haven for all those indebted adventurers, so she promised the pay would be handled right and the taxes would follow the city's rules to the letter. Karen studies Nay closely and confirms her name. Then she flashes a small smile, extends her hand, and promises it'll be her pleasure to work with her. So when the handshake lands, sparkling eyes and pure excitement take over, and she thanks her for the trust and permission. So the Silver Moon Guild, seconds from bankruptcy, got swallowed up by the biggest guild in the whole country. A few days later, Shuru's shop is still packed to the brim. Then one day, he takes care of a customer. He calls Anna to grab some big matches, but she doesn't answer. She just freezes there, eyes wide with worry. Then the call keeps ringing again. No answer, so he steps in and leans close, talking right by her ear. The little brule jolts, spins around, blurts an apology, and asks if he needed the broom. Shiro stared at the size and kept repeating one thing. He needed the big matches. Anna sprints to grab them, but just as she's almost there, her attention gets yanked away again. The young man starts counting the coins, then realizes her gaze is drifting somewhere far away. He dials her again, and the second he hears her hesitate, he leans in and demands to know what's wrong. Aina drops her gaze in pure nerves, and her small hands start to tremble uncontrollably. With her voice stuck in her throat, the girl drops to her knees, fighting back tears that spill in her eyes. Her voice cracked as she begged for money. Then, right on cue, a pile of coins clattered and spilled onto the ground. He takes her hands, stares at her with pure relief, and asks how much she needed. Anna hesitates, then blurts out an apology, insisting she never meant to cause trouble. Shuri meets her with a warm, gentle smile and softly guides her head, reassuring her. He grins and tells her everything's okay, she has nothing to worry about, and that asking for help took real courage. So yeah, her bravery is seriously admirable. The young man immediately asks if anything happened to her mother, and Anna snaps, shaken to the core. But before Shiro could even answer, Lyra storms in, eyes blazing, and snaps, "Shiro, come eat." But when he spots the girl's face, he blurts out an apology for cutting in. Right after that, Karen barges in too, calling the young man over to talk about the city's future. Then she spots what's going on, freezes, and shoots out an apology. Lyra asks if they should come back another time, then rushes over to Ina and asks what she thinks. The little brule wipes her tears, forces a shaky smile, and swears everything's fine, so everyone can stay right there. With a grin, the young man glances at the others, then steps up, asking for a counsel so they can listen to her and offer the help she needs. Lyra pats his chest and tells everyone to leave it to them, because Rolf's the guy who knows exactly how to handle it. Karen steps up beside the mayor too, then tells everyone, "If Aina has any trouble, come find me, no hesitation." That tiny birdie's eyes suddenly brim with emotion, so Shiro adds, "I wanted to help too." And the girl finally breaks down into sobs, struggling to tell him the truth. Her mother was sick. Right then, the girl's mother snapped into a brutal coughing fit inside their house. And the flowers Aina picked start to droop, one by one, until they're barely hanging on. Anna still remembers being just 4 years old, tucked into a tiny house where happiness felt constant, laughing with her mom and dad, eating side by side with them, and always snuggling right next to her favorite teddy bear. But then one day, their whole world flipped overnight. War swallowed the sea they lived in. Their home, the place that used to feel safe, was wiped out in flames, and even her favorite toy crumbled into ashes, while her mother clutched her to her chest, refusing to let her go. Crackling through the ruins, her father stumbled into view and held out the little teddy bear, now battered, worn, and dirty, while his face burned with heartbreak and deep, aching sorrow. Losing everything crushed them, but for Aina the worst pain was watching her father get dragged off to serve as a soldier. She clung to him, along with her mother, hugging them both as tight as she could. He promised he'd be back in a flash. Then he vanished, and the two of them were left alone, completely and utterly stranded. The war burned for just half a year, but when the dust settled, year after year passed, and Anna's father never came home. The moment she turned 6, her mom dropped the bombshell that they'd be packing up for a new city. But this girl dug her heels in and said no, because deep down she was terrified that once they were gone, her father could never track them down when he came back. Seeing her daughter's reaction, the mother's words died in her throat. Then he just pulled her into a tight hug, sobbing hard, so stunned he couldn't find a single word, or even figure out what to do next. Soon after, they tore free from the city, crossed border after border, and marched through endless days and nights until Rick finally appeared on the horizon. The curious little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve and demanded to know why they'd come to this city, and her mother answered that there would be no more war, and she refused to let anyone else important slip away again. Life in that border town was brutal. Her mom spent her days out in the fields, crushing herself just so her daughter wouldn't go hungry, and little by little, her body started to break down. And just like that, she fell sick, while her mother kept begging Anna's forgiveness every single time, and the poor girl started believing she caused it all, working her mother too hard. At night, Anna would hug her teddy so tight it hurt, crying alone on the floor of her tiny room until the tears finally ran out. And then she hit on an idea. With pure determination in her chest, she realized she had to grow up fast. So she shoved her toy aside, then stared hard at herself in the mirror. She marched off, dead set on selling flowers, and with the small stash she'd managed to gather, she finally scraped together enough cash to get her permit to sell in the city. Every single morning, Ada slipped out to hawk her flowers and didn't come back until nightfall, threading through the market with her basket full and her eyes on the prize. Then one fateful day, she stumbled upon Shiro, and the moment her eyes locked on him, her whole world snapped to attention. He swept in with a bouquet for her, and then topped it off by landing her a job. Because of that, Anna could finally comfort her mother more, and pure happiness lit up her heart. The little girl bowed her head, thanked every god she knew, and poured out a prayer packed with pure gratitude. The moment Aina pocketed her very first paycheck, 10 silver coins, she already had her answer locked in from day one, knowing exactly what she'd spend it on. She barreled through the market and finally tracked down an adventurer who once promised her he had a potion that could cure any disease. Without a single pause, the girl grabbed the potion, emptied her whole salary to buy it, and thrust it into her mother's hands, telling everyone it came from Shiro. The moment Anna drank the medicine, hope lit her up, but it didn't last, and her expectations crashed into raw frustration. Even after she drank every last drop from that bottle, her mother still didn't get any better. Desperation slammed into Anna, and her vision started to blur. All she could think about was one thing: how to rip her mother out of that disease. She realized she had to get money, because with enough money, she could drag her mother into a massive big city, where real treatment might finally be waiting for them. With that thought burning in her mind, Aina marched to Shiro, praying to God that even if he despised her, he'd still say yes and save her mother's life. She gathered every last ounce of courage she had. She grabbed Shiro's attention and asked him for a loan, bracing herself for the instant look down she knew he'd throw her way. But to her shock, the young man didn't mistreat her at all. He just softly patted her head, and right then Aina felt held, like someone had finally wrapped her up after a lifetime alone. After soaking up every single word they said, then he took a deep breath, locked in with understanding eyes, and Anna stayed frozen, head down, shoulders trembling as her sad face spilled out the weight of what she was feeling. And for a moment the room went dead silent, until suddenly. The dead silence snapped when Liar slammed his palm into the wall beside him, cracking a few bricks, eyes blazing with raw outrage. And then his voice boomed as he demanded to know who in the world sold that horrible potion to Ina. He clenched his fists, pounded the air like it had done something to him, and vowed that if he ever caught the one who lied and hurt an innocent little girl, he'd make them regret it. He'd beat them 100 times over without mercy. But before his rage could keep spilling, Neska shot in fast and slammed a Liar across the head with her staff, then snapped at him to stop wrecking other people's things, while Rolf strode over to Anna and crouched down beside her, his voice steady, calm, and deadly serious. He admitted it was brutal to swallow the fact that the potion she'd given her mother wouldn't cure a single disease. Then the little girl blinked up at him, totally lost, and demanded, "What are you even talking about?" Then the cleric leaned in and explained it straight. Heal potions patch up only external wounds, while cure potions slam poisons out of your system. But there's no potion that can cure a disease. Aina blinked hard, trying to digest it, then fought back with an innocent little stare, insisting the adventurer of her soldier swore that potion would make her mother fine and heal her for good. Rolf let out a weary sigh, dipped his head, and apologized, then admitted the truth. The adventurer had lied to her, sold her something that never gave the promised effect, and repeated the cleric's words slowly as he watched her finally nod, saying she understood. The moment that cruel truth slammed into her mind, Her eyes flooded, tears spilled down her cheeks, and as she suffered his chest clenched, while Liar snapped with fresh rage and turned everything around him into chaos. Without even testing his strength, he smashed the window's glass. Then pure rage exploded out of him as he yelled he'd hunt that bastard down, loud enough to shake the air. And with the punishment he'd earned, Nesca and Kulfad decided to tag along and leave Rolf to handle the rest. Determined to catch the criminal no matter what, he drove forward, while the rest of the crew split off with Anna, heading to her house to check in on how her mother was doing. Shiro follows the little girl with a stern face, still replaying every word she just told him about the disease. Karen's face tightened with worry when the pharmacist said it was a disease born from a ruined life, and it hit her hard, forcing her to fully grasp how serious things really were. As they keep moving, Shiro yanks Rolf into a corner and whispers, right under the radar, asking about the disease. Rothen spells it out. The sickness creeps in slow, rotting your body from the limbs up until you're stripped of every ounce of strength, and the victims can even drop dead. Some scholars have tried to track how it spreads, but the source is still a total mystery. Shiro shudders as the truth lands, realizing this is far worse than he ever imagined. After a while of walking, Anna spots a small little house, and the second she sees it, she can't help thinking how wild it is that this kid, living out on the outskirts, still walks out every day to sell flowers and bring home money for her mother. Anna gulps hard, pulls herself together, and gathers courage. She shoves the door open with a huge grin, bursts in like sunshine, and calls out to Shiro with warm, lively energy. Then she probably sweeps him inside to meet her mother. The woman stretched out on the bed. Then she met the young man's eyes with a soft, warm gaze. Even though she's still barely holding on, she forces herself to sit up, then pushes out her name, Stella. And with a soft, trembling voice, she thanks Shiro for looking after her daughter. But he shoots back fast, telling her he should be the one thanking her for everything. Stella fights to push herself upright, her condition too frail, and blurts out an apology for not being dressed the right way. Anna and Shiro shot her worried looks and warned that she can't keep pushing like this. Her health comes first. The woman tried to fight back, insisting it wasn't polite to greet guests while lying down, but Anna cut her off hard. She needed to rest right then. Stella swung her attention to Karen, and the girl quickly spilled the truth. This woman was the mayor of the town. Stella's face tightens with worry, and she asks, hesitantly, why the mayor is even here. Rolf stays calm and explains that once they heard about Amos' troubles, they came in person to check things out. Stella exhales, admitting she's sorry for all the worry, and for dragging them all the way to her home. Karen shakes her head and snaps that she's the one who should apologize, because as mayor, she felt utterly helpless, unable to save everyone who needed her. Stella clocks the heavy mix of frustration and regret in her face, and it hits hard, especially since Stella's not even from that town. She whips around to her daughter and fires. Since when are you buddy-buddy with the mayor, and why didn't you tell me? Aina grins with stars in her eyes and says, I didn't just befriend Karen, I also made friends with Shiro and Rolf. And there beyond them were Liar, Kilfa, and Nesca, absolute legends as adventurers. While Stella stared at her daughter with a warm, gentle glow, asking if she was truly happy having made so many friends. The little girl answers instantly, and that huge grin says it all. She's over the moon. Stella's heart swells at her daughter's pure joy, and right then Aina darts up to ask if her mom's eaten yet. Then she urges them to whip up soup for their guests. Stella tells everyone she'd cook it herself, but Emma cuts in fast, saying there's no meat anyway, and if she's going to cook, she wants to handle every single detail herself. Then the girl declares she's heading to the river to fetch water, and Rolf immediately steps in and offers to go with her. Stella stares at the moment for a beat, then snaps into action. She tells Karen, step outside for a minute. Stella had to steal some private time with Shiro, so when they were finally alone, Shiro just stared back, waiting. Then Stella froze for a beat, and with a fierce, determined look, she blurted out that she wanted to ask Anna for a favor. Then she leaned in and locked eyes with the young man as she asked if he could step in and take care of her daughter the moment something went wrong with her. Shiro's mind goes blank at the sudden question, and for a heartbeat he can't even speak, until Stella clocks the shock on his face and blurts out an apology for springing such a sudden, maybe even selfish request. But she can feel the clock ticking, and all she can think about is Anna's future. Her eyes dim as she asks if the little girl has already told him about the disease. The young man gives a quick nod, then the mother leans in and asks if her daughter cried while telling it. Shura admits she did, though the truth is, Aina had been crying long before she even started. Stella shuts her eyes, gulps a deep breath, and you can see she's rattled, like this was a nightmare she'd been imagining for years. She saw just how hard her daughter had been fighting, even as she slipped out of work and started depending on the girl to keep them alive. Because she couldn't bear being a mother who was powerless while her own kid carried everything. But the worst part wasn't even the pain. It was watching Anna clamp on a smile just so she wouldn't worry Stella. Then, in the last few days, Stella finally caught it. Something felt off, like the little girl had changed how she moved and acted. As they chatted, Anna couldn't hide her real joy, and that lit a spark in her daughter's mind. One day, bursting with curiosity, she finally blurted out, "What's making you so happy?" With a bright gleam in her eye, the girl shot back, practically bursting with joy. "I finally have the kindest big brother. I'm so happy I can't believe it." Right then, Stella felt something click deep in her chest. When she stared at Shuro, she couldn't ignore it. He looked exactly like Anna's father. And when she spotted him striding through that door earlier, a weird, sinking feeling hit her, like the night was about to take a turn. After vanishing for so long, the one who left finally came back. Sherba's chest suddenly tightened, and he rushed to apologize, saying, yeah, it was him there instead of Inna's real father, and he regretted it. But Stella only offered a faint smile, shook her head, and told him he didn't need to apologize because that was what mattered. She couldn't wait to say it. Pure happiness filled her. Because he was there, she finally latched onto her husband's face again, one she'd been slipping away from, and that reclaimed memory wrapped her in real comfort. Tears welled up in her eyes. Her voice shook as she whispered that all of this meant she'd find her husband faster the moment her time finally came. Shiru's eyes bulged as he demanded what she meant, and Stella let out a quiet sigh, serene on the outside, saying her body was already failing and time was running out fast. She fought to push herself up, then shot the young man a fierce, determined look and begged again. "Please, take care of Aina once I'm gone." She knew Aina was strong and brave, but deep down, she was still that same scared little girl, the one who'd need someone standing right beside her to help her keep moving forward. Before Stella could finish her sentence, her legs gave out of nowhere and her strength drained instantly. She snapped into action, surged a step forward, and caught her before she could hit the ground. For a split second, the two of them froze, staring at each other, both blushing like that sudden closeness blindsided them. He blurted out, worried sick, "Are you okay?" Stella was still stunned, so she gave a tiny nod and the young man hurried her back onto the bed when, right then, something snapped his attention. He shot her a quick question and asked for permission to touch her foot just for a moment, and the woman instantly blushed hard. Her cheeks flushed as her heart went pounding like it was trying to break free. Still mortified, she shut her eyes and reluctantly gave in, not even realizing why he'd ask something like that. Shiro watched her like a hawk, and after just a few seconds, he confirmed it, exactly like he'd figured it would be. Stella blinked awake, looked at him like she didn't understand, and then, awkward as hell but still nerves first, asked if by any chance he liked her legs. Sherry choked hard, his face exploding red, and he instantly denied it, insisting it was nothing like that. Turns out he was finally getting a grip on what was causing the disease, how it shattered lives, and maybe, what might actually stop it. Stella's eyes flew wide in shock. She couldn't wrap her head around what she'd just heard. Until that moment, she'd never even let herself imagine there might be a cure. Before she could steady herself, tears spilled down her cheeks as quiet sobs shook her. Because deep inside, she never wanted to die, and she couldn't bear to leave her little daughter alone in a world that was still so cruel and her daughter still so innocent. Shura gripped her hands tight and promised she wouldn't die, telling her she'd keep living right beside Ine as soon as he finally figured out what to do. At that exact instant, the bedroom door burst open and Karen stepped in, demanding to know if the conversation was finally over. Then Anna and Rolf rushed in right behind her. The second they saw what was happening in front of them, their eyes went wide with pure shock. There was Shiro gripping Stella's hands like he'd made up his mind, staring back with unwavering determination. Karen and Rolf just stand there, absolutely stunned, staring at the young man, not knowing what to think, while Shiro freezes dead in his tracks, panic crashing through his head as he scrambles to figure out how the hell he's going to explain all this. Trying to explain what happened felt brutal, because Karim was radiating pure terror, and Rolf had his weapons up, ready to snap into action for whatever came next. Aina snapped, confused, "Mom, what's happening?" While Stella, still wiping tears from her cheeks, finally spilled the whole story. Shura exhaled like a weight had vanished from his chest the moment he realized Stella had straightened everything out, because the alternative in his head was terrifying, and he could barely stand it. He swallowed, cleared his throat, and forced his thoughts into order, then launched into it. The ruin-life disease from his homeland actually had a name, Barabari. Everyone froze at the sound of it, and Shura kept going, right on. They said the sickness came from your body running short on vital vitamins, and once it got bad, the lack of them numbed your limbs and stole your ability to move. The shocking part, the fix was ridiculously simple. Just top up the missing vitamins. Anna's face lit up as soon as she heard that, and she blurted out, "Is there a medicine that can cure my mother?" Shioru grinned and told her, yes. He clung to his grandmother's words, the ones that always pushed him to step in and help anyone in trouble. With iron determination, he fired up his alchemy and turned his money into yen, then took off to grab the medicine. Later on, he came back clutching a bottle of pills and started explaining everything to Stella. Even though it didn't look impressive, this medicine could still cure her. And when the mayor and the cleric got a close look at the bottle, they stared at it in pure shock because they'd never seen anything like it. Stella froze for a second and asked if the medicine was crazy expensive, and the woman just grinned, said not to worry, because the bill was already handled with that same smile, and Stella shouldn't even try to argue. But the young man stood his ground, unshakable. When he finally reached this town, Aina had bylaid him out 100 times, so now it was his turn to return the favor, and he placed the pill in her hand with a glass of water. Stella took it with tears streaming down her face, swallowing the medicine with full, blazing hope. A whole month flipped by, and the moment the bell rang, it screamed that a brand new day was here. Aina stomped back home with Shioru by her side, cracked open the door, and there it was. Her mother had created her. The moment he spotted her standing there, the little girl's eyes went wide, and she blurted out that she hoped her mother was feeling better. Stella just smiled warmly and admitted she couldn't believe it either, because she was feeling incredibly well. Aina sprinted up to her and blurted, "Can we sleep together like before?" And even with that sharp pause in her hesitation, Stella finally nodded, yes. And right after that, they tangled up in bed together every single night. A mother and daughter slam into a tight embrace, tears of pure joy pouring down their faces as they cling to each other like they'll never let go. Anna sobbed without control as her mother held her close, stroking her hair and begging forgiveness for scaring her like this, swearing that from that moment on, they'd never be separated again. Shioru just stared in silence, and real joy burst through him as he watched them finally settle in peace together. Then the thought of his grandmother hit hard. Like, if she could see him right now, she'd know he'd saved someone. Later that night, the young man slipped onto his balcony, staring out like the whole world was waiting on him. Clutching his drink, he stared into the chaos of what just happened, and that day felt absolutely unreal. Stella was fully cured after the vitamins kicked in, and now Anna could finally talk to her mother again. Pick the flowers, kick back, and forget your worries. Because once you see that little girl glowing even more, you'll feel her joy spread like wildfire. And just like that, the Silver Moon Guild got officially stamped as a blessed branch of the fairies' power. And just like that, the Azure Flash group kicked off their grind for the main guild, diving straight into forest exploration. Shioru couldn't stop staring at his numbers. He'd raked in around 50 million yen in just the last 2 months. And if he kept that pace up for a year, he'd have enough saved to finally retire. The thought of living alone at home, never clocking in again, sent thrills through him. Just when he thought he could finally breathe in peace, Karen popped up behind him out of nowhere, and he nearly spilled his drink from pure shock. Then she grinned and told him good night. He's still reeling from that shock, groaning that he swore he was about to have a heart attack from the scare, and the mayor just laughs, throws him an apology, and asks what the heck he's been drinking. Shioru cracked that the sickness was from his homeland, then leaned in and asked Karen if she wanted a drink with him. Karen said yes. And the two of you chatted up a storm, both of you grinning as you sipped that drink. Then the mayor suddenly asked if she should pat the young man's head before he even got the chance to answer. She yanked his head toward her and let Shioru rest on her lap, and he tried to protest, until Karen cut him off, reminding him he'd already admitted that the teiku loosens up the moment praise hits. Blushing hard, he finally nodded and confirmed it, and the mayor ordered him to shut up while she ran her hand over the young man. Then she casually asked whether he hadn't had a little too much to drink. But with a warm, gentle voice, Karen told him how truly grateful she was that he'd come all the way to this city. And it wasn't some reward at all. If she could do anything for him, he should tell her right away, no hesitation. The sheriff snapped to attention and said, "No need for that. Everything you did was just what was within your grasp." Karen watched him for a beat, then told him she got it, because he didn't look like a person driven by greed at all. The young man blushed and snapped back fast, saying he hadn't told her to treat him like some noble saint. He admitted straight up that he loved money and yeah, he was insanely greedy. At the same time, it hit him. His grandmother raised him to always step in and help anyone who needed it. Karen smiled, praised how incredible his grandmother must have been, and then leaned in to ask, "So what's her name?" Sherwood paused for a heartbeat, then blurted that his grandmother's name was Arasego Amio. Karen repeated it under her breath, and the moment it hit, her eyes snapped wide like she'd just cracked the truth. Without warning, she yanked the young man by the shoulders and started shaking him like crazy, demanding to know if he was Arisu's grandson, the immortal witch. Shiro was stunned by her sudden reaction and blurted out whether the mayor knew anything about his grandmother. Karen then dropped the bombshell. She didn't just know, she said everyone on the continent did too. The legendary immortal witch was real, but almost nobody had ever seen her, and Karen made it clear she was almost nobody. Honestly, it was even more mind-blowing and confusing. And Karen told him she first met Eris the year before during the Harvest Festival. Then boom, the witch just appeared out of nowhere in the middle of town, sipping drinks and tearing up the dance floor. The young man couldn't believe it, because his grandmother had vanished 7 years ago and no one else ever saw her again. But before he could even argue, Karen exploded, insisting she still remembered it. How that witch gathered star fragments that day and forged a magical sword named Mel Gibson. Shiro had to pause for a beat, just to let it all sink in. That sword's name yanked him straight back to his childhood, smashing old memories wide open. You snapped your eyes to a poster of a famous actor hanging in your grandmother's house. When he demanded her secret, she blurted out that it was her favorite actor, and then she planted a kiss right on the photo. Still reeling, Karen blurted that she could barely wrap her head around it. Shura's grandmother was that witch. But it finally clicked, because that kid always turned up with medicines and mysterious new trinkets. So she asked if he'd found his grandmother again, and Sherwood shook his head. No, he hadn't seen her in 7 years. Then he made an excuse, slipped out of the room, and without thinking, headed straight for the balcony, planted his feet, and took a deep breath. He screamed at the top of his lungs that his grandmother was still alive. Shura finally makes it back to his grandmother's house in this present world, drops to the floor, and just stares at the altar with her photo, shocked speechless that she's still alive. His head spins as he stares at the photo of that elderly woman who always struck the peace sign with zero shame, and then he forces out a deep breath, trying to wrestle his feelings into order. He stares at that photo one last time, convinced the Harvest Festival is where he'll finally spot her again. Then Didermini rises, steps through the portal, and tears himself back into the other world. The day before, while he was chatting with Karen, he learned the truth. His grandmother wasn't just quirky, she was a legendary, famous witch. The mayor stared at the empty space where the elderly woman should have been, then leaned toward Shuru and said he totally got why Shuru was desperate to find her. But Shuru should stay in Minarik a little longer, because last year Shuru's grandmother showed up out of nowhere right at the Harvest Festival. Shuru's jaw dropped when it hit him. If it happened once, it could happen again. And if his grandmother really loved festivals, then there was a huge chance she'd show up for this year's event. Karen's confirmation hit like a lightning bolt. Her suspicions were right, and she revealed the festival would be special because the city was roaring into its 120th anniversary. As mayor, she was already blazing the trail for a massive celebration, and she pulled him in, asking him to help however he could. Weeks slipped by and Shuru suddenly clocked the truth. Only 2 months stood between him and the event. He loved festivals, so when Karen asked, he didn't even hesitate. But now he was trapped in a tough spot, staring at the options like they were a puzzle. Food felt too easy since other stalls would always have it, and food competitions didn't sound all that fresh, while the classic festival games were basically useless too, because most people already had them lined up. So he kept replaying it in his head, realizing just how brutal it was to come up with anything that didn't circle back to food, and rage bubbled as he rubbed his forehead, begging his childhood memories to cough up a clue. Suddenly, a wild idea lit up his brain. Then he didn't waste a second, grabbed several cameras and rushed straight to the store. The moment she spotted the gear and frowned in pure confusion, demanding to know what all of it was, Shura broke into a grin and said, "That's a great question." He grinned and blurted that they were cameras, and he'd sell them as a brand new product. Yet the little girl just couldn't wrap her head around it. Seeing that shaky look on her face, he figured words wouldn't cut it. So he went straight to proof, told Ayanan to watch him, and snapped a photo in a blink. Aina held up the image for the little girl. Then her eyes snapped wide with pure shock. She demanded to know how it ended up in the paper in the first place, and whether it got so tiny it got trapped in there. Shuru burst into laughter and teased her, asking if she was shocked, then broke it down. This thing could instantly turn people and whole landscapes into living paintings, and he said it was the perfect chance to try it right then. and begged Aina to smile as he snapped several pictures of her. The little bro was totally mesmerized by the pictures, and he couldn't stop thinking about learning how to use that camera. Tons of clumsy trouble later, she finally snapped a photo of Shuru, and the moment she did, she blurted out that she'd hoped he worked. And he said yes, smiling as he told her the picture came out amazing. That made Aina light up, and now she couldn't wait to take even more. The young man jumped right into the fun and nailed a few killer poses. After a couple pictures, he snapped, "That's it for me," and called it quits. Aina then jabbed a finger at the next camera and demanded, "What's that one?" Shurv said it was a Polaroid, and she practically lit up at how many different models existed. Then he leaned in and nudged Aina to snap her focus back. The second she turned around, he snapped a photo, grinning as he played it like, "Got you, surprise." The little girl stared at the photo, grumbled that she looked weird in it, then snapped her fingers and shouted for Shuru. The second he turned, she snatched another Polaroid and snapped it fast, laughing like crazy. Then she grinned and said it was her turn to surprise him, and the young man shot her a raised eyebrow look, wondering if this was revenge. But when you stare at that photo, you'll see him flashing a peace sign like it's the calm before the storm. He stared at that image and snapped. He looked just like his grandmother. Right then, Stella barged into the shop and thanked Shuru for looking after her daughter all day. He grinned and asked how she was settling into the new place, and whether the move still left her wiped out. Stella told him she was fine because his help had taken the edge off everything. Shuru even set them up with corporate housing so mother and daughter could live near the store. Anna spots the opening to gossip, blurting that her mom was awful at organizing. Then Stella flushes with embarrassment and blurts back, "Did you have to say that?" and asked for the daughter to stop saying stuff like that, but Shuru only grinned and told her, "If you ever need help, you can count on me." Aina felt totally out of place, then nervously thanked him before she could overthink it. Then he cracked a joke, admitting he was terrible at organizing anything. So Shuri froze in shock, rubbed the back of his head, apologized, and the little girl just grinned right back at him. With that second wave, she blew them a final goodbye. Shuri lifted her hand and waved them off, wearing a calm, joyful smile as the two walked away. The Silver Moon Guild was snapped up and folded straight into the unstoppable Fairy Blessing Guild. Shira still remembered that first day, back when all she could hear was the crying coming from behind her desk. But the moment he stepped into the building again, everything felt totally different. A bunch of adventurers were buzzing with excitement, trading secrets and tips about the forest like it was a battlefield. He could barely wrap his head around it. This same guild that was nearly shut down just 2 months ago was now one of the busiest in the whole kingdom. As soon as Emil spotted him, she locked onto his presence and hurried over before he could slip away. She asked if he'd really come just to see her, the bunny, and then petted Shuru with a grin so mischievous it practically sparkled, demanding to know if, by any chance, he hadn't brought her a special, super expensive gift. Anointed Shiro told her to stop, but the middle wouldn't back off and kept needling her. She basically told him, "If you want it, I'll be your wife, easy, and we'll live it up in luxury." And in her head, she was already married to him, lazing in a grand castle, taking carriage rides, or even soaring on a dragon and tossing gold to the crowd. Yet Sheriff shut it down hard and refused the whole idea. Unshaken, Emil kept talking like he owned the moment, claiming he could do anything he wanted with her. And then, right in the middle of it, she started unbuttoning her shirt. Shiru's heart slammed into panic as he begged her to stop, and while he tried to wrench himself away, he blurted out, "Shouldn't you be working or something?" But Emil shot Shuru a sly grin and said she was about to take a break. Right as he opened his mouth, the rabbit girl slammed him against the wall and leaned in, asking if he wanted to drink with her in a dark, empty room. Shuru jerked back, thanked her, and refused. He yanked her hand and tried to back away, spitting out one of his grandmother's warnings. Never leave a woman alone in a dark room if she can't handle her alcohol, because that was her last request. Even after he just found out his grandmother was alive, the adventurers around him burst into amused laughter, snickering that he was trying again, like always. Feigning ignorance, the rabbit girl grinned and said Shuryu was clutching her hands with such burning passion that if she hadn't shoved him back, he'd have dragged her straight into a dark room himself. She closed in and told him plain, no matter how Shuru tried to trash her, she knew he wanted her. The young man started to sweat ice cold as Emil lunged to kiss him, and Shuru panicked, screaming that an octopus was attacking him. Then, out of nowhere, a shadow slid in behind the mill. It was Kilfa the scout who snapped in a pinpoint kick, launching the rabbit girl through the air and slamming her into a wooden barrel with a brutal crash. Shuru erupted in celebration, shouting that the terrifying octopus trap was finally crushed, and Kilful snapped his gaze to him, asking if he was all right. Shiro's eyes welled with tears of relief as he nodded, saying yes, he was okay. Meanwhile, down at the guild's bar, the adventurers were laughing it up, clinking their beer mugs like they owned the night. Shiro grabbed Kilfa's hand and thanked her for yanking him out of Emil's grip. Then the cat girl leaned in and explained that rabbit people went absolutely wild whenever the full moon hit. Emil shot back, insisting it wasn't true, but Neska, the sorceress, just shook her head and felt bad for Shiro, saying it didn't look like a healthy relationship at all. Rolf cracked a joke that Emil had almost managed to take a bite out of Shiro's forbidden fruit, and the proud rabbit girl proved him right by taking a big bite of a chicken leg. They all snapped their heads toward her, stunned, like how was she still standing here? Emil just shrugged and said she hated being left out. Then boom, ripping shouts tore through the hall. Two agitated adventurers, both on the edge of a fight. And just like that, the whole crew started buzzing, dead set on who'd win. So Shiro shot up and demanded they cut the fight before it spiraled. But Liar just burst into laughter, saying that adventurer brawls were basically normal, like a weird kind of handshake, and that the tension in town had been building up for a while, so the young man demanded to know why. Liar told him the forest expedition had pulled in adventurers from every corner, like the kingdom's absolute best. Even after 2 whole months of digging, they still hadn't found a single ruin. While they were trading theories, the fight carried on. Then a masked adventurer snapped his whip. His opponent barely skidded out of the way, only to shoot back with a razor-precise kick. Shiro snapped, saying they'd all hit their limit. Liar agreed right behind him. Then he added this. With hardly any distractions in that little town, the frustration kept ballooning until it nearly tore him apart. A guy hiding under the table leaned out and jabbed Shiro, and she snapped, "Don't open your shirt again." Pouting, she swore she'd never do it in front of all these people. With a mischievous smirk, she said that when Liar warned about distractions, he meant exactly this. Yet the shearers still had no clue. And a guy burst out laughing, calling him so dense, while she talked about brothels like it was nothing. Liar's face flared red with pure embarrassment, and she immediately denied it, insisting that's not what she meant at all. Emil kept pressing him, grilling him about what had him so rattled, and right then Neska clamped down on Liar's foot with her heel, snapped that he was spouting nonsense, and he scrambled to explain himself. But the sorcerers cranked their force up even more, and the warriors' screams tear through the air. Just as the adventurers' brawl finally fizzled out, I slammed my way through the door. Her overwhelming aura crashed through the hall, and with a fierce stare she demanded, "What exactly is going on?" The moment the fight erupted, everyone snapped to a stop, and they quickly blurted, "We're not fighting." When Shiro finally came into view, Nei blurted out an apology for popping up so suddenly, but all the young man could think about was how insanely impressive she looked. Then his eyes snapped to Amel cowering under the table, and he called her out. The rabbit girl felt a cold shiver crawl down her spine. With a sharp, threatening grin, May demanded to know whether she'd been there the whole time, and why she didn't shut the fight down earlier. She tried to explain, but May wasn't buying any excuses. Without wasting a second, she yanked Amel out into the open. The rabbit girl shrieked that Shiro had to save his future wife, while she begged Ni to hit her with any punishment at all, just not a salary cut. Once the chaos finally fizzled out, Lyra marched up to Shiro and asked him for a favor. While they were out in the forest hunting ruins, he told me they stumbled straight into some rare flowers. Then the whole group huddled up, spilled every mission detail, and filled Shiro in. He beamed and said he'd join them, and Lyra shot back, "Are you sure?" The young man nodded but warned, "You'll have to protect me." The warriors grinned like they owned the battlefield, claiming they were way stronger than ever, and then with that, they all raised their mugs again, clinked them together, and celebrated like the moment was pure gold. A soft breeze slid across the flower-stuffed field, and Shiro felt the magic hit him hard as he watched those blooms sprawl across the horizon. He couldn't help it. He grinned and went on and on about how amazing and one-of-a-kind they were. Neska, the Roop sorceress, crouches close to the flowers, studies them like a pro, and in a cool, steady voice tells you their name, Apsara. These rare blooms only sprout where the water's purity is beyond doubt, fragile as glass but worth its weight in gold for forging advanced healing potions. Right after the explanation, the whole group flops down on the flower carpet for a quick breather, grabbing every last bit of rest before they jump back into their mission. Yet Shiro can't help staring up at the sky, cursing the fact that Ina isn't there with them, because he knows she would have adored this wild ocean of blooms, and the thought of her missing it leaves a sharp ache in his chest. Across the field, Lyre snaps their attention with crossed arms and a glaring, disapproving look, and the warrior laughs that he'd fully expected Neska and Kilfa to crash into sleep the second they got the chance. only to admit he's stunned to see Shuru lounging so peacefully she's about to doze off. The young man darts in to apologize, saying that after that long, brutal walk, his body finally gave up, and all he wanted was one simple moment to rest. Liar barely buys the excuse and snaps that they have to finish the job before sunset. Then, and only then, they can finally rest without a single worry. A week ago, the Azure Flash Guild stumbled onto those rare flowers, and that's when the whole mission locked in. While they dug deeper, they discovered the Apsara are the one key ingredient for top-tier healing potions, the kind doctors and healers in the kingdom fight to get their hands on. But right then, a huge problem exploded into the picture. On the way back, the flowers started drooping fast, stripping away every last bit of their power before anyone could deliver them. No matter how hard Nesca hustled, watered them, and even threw magic at trying to keep them fresh, it still all failed, and the group was right on the edge of giving up on them. When Liar hit a brilliant idea, he leaned in and begged Shuru for help. Because the kid had that insane space storage power, he could stash mountains of anything with zero weight crushing him. And once it was inside, time totally froze, so nothing ever spoiled or lost a single property. Liar says they've already picked enough flowers for the day, then snaps. Kilfa has been passed out asleep the whole time, totally missing the entire conversation. Just as Liar tries to shake her awake, a strange noise hits and Kilfa's face flips in an instant. With a grim voice, she snaps that something's closing in, and the whole group instantly tenses up, yanks their weapons out and goes on full high alert. Before you can blink, the sky darkens as a huge cloud of insects crashes into view. Rhinoceros beetles, gigantic and downright intimidating. Shuru's eyes bulge the moment she spots those giant insects and tangled wire, and her brain scrambles to count them. She lands on at least 17, and that number does not feel safe. Liar rushes to the front and barks for everyone to freeze and stay dead silent. Shuru then studies the beetles up close and grimly realizes plenty of them are wrecked. Deep cuts carve their bodies. Nesca studies the scene and snaps to a conclusion. Those injuries came from a spell that slices through the wind, and Rolf, the brute's cleric, adds a grim detail. The fluids still dripping from the insects, bodies line up, proving the wounds are fresh. Just as they started to debate what could have attacked those insects, Lyriel snapped a warning. Those beetles had already found them. No choice left, she snaps at Rolf to guard Shuru, and right as Nesca starts cooking up a spell, the sorceress fires back. She was already working on it. With a lightning-fast twist, she rips a roaring fire arrow from her staff. The blast slams the insects down and turns the ground to ash. Then Rolf steps right in front of Shuru, glaring, and makes it clear nothing will get to him. Kilfa hurls a volley of razor-sharp knives at the beetles, but when the blades hit, they just ricochet off and leave almost nothing but sparks and shock. Before she can even blink, she's suddenly swarmed by insects. Nesca's help, he screams it at the top of his lungs. The sorceress stays cool, dares a fresh spell, and blasts out a fire attack so intense it feels like the world just lit up. Rolf keeps scorching down a few more insects when Shura suddenly realizes fire is their weakness, so he bolts off in a flash, leaving Rolf scrambling with worry. The cleric bellows at Shuru to stop acting reckless, warns that the bear repellent he used earlier won't touch those monsters, and then Shuru grins and tells him, "Relax, this time I've got something totally different." The young man yanks a tiny lighter from his pocket, grips a can of gas spray, and hits them both at once. Boom! A massive wall of flame erupts. Flames roar through the air and slam straight into the beetles, turning them to ash in seconds. Yet somehow he improvises a homemade flamethrower anyway. Shuru snaps to his companions, screaming that it's insanely dangerous and they should never, ever try it at home. Liar's still staring, wondering if that was pure magic. Before Shearer can let the question hang, he gestures at Rolf to wipe out one of the last insects. The cleric obeys the order instantly, then swings his mighty mace and smashes the monster's tough shell to bits. Only 6 enemies were left standing. Liar with that forced grin insists they were almost there, but right at that, beetles swarm in, zeroing in on Nesca, and Shura grabs his chance to fire that improvised flamethrower again. But then he realizes the sorceress is way too close to the insects, and if he fires that flame, he'll burn the wrong thing. Just a second to decide before he can think of another. One of the beetles rockets toward Nesca, and before it can land, Shuru explodes forward, grabbing and shoving her out of the line of fire. But before he can react, she gets out of the way. Then the insect sinks its claws into the young man's body instead. Lair shrieks in panic, yelling at Shuru to hurl himself into the river to wipe out the creature. So Shuru has no choice but to dive in and plunge into the water. The plan hits, and the beetle lets him go, Yet the young man gets yanked straight into the power of the raging current. Nesca hurled a spell that summoned the spirits of water to guard the young man. Liar's panic explodes the moment he sees Shuro getting yanked toward the riverbank. Azure Flash's leader swears he'll track him down and tells Shuro to hold tight and wait for them. Shiro crawled back to consciousness, his mind racing as he prayed his friends would come charging in and save him. Suddenly, a female voice blasts through the chaos, calling his name and telling him to hold on. Sherbakov spits out the water he'd gulped, and the girl lights up like, "You're alive." But the young man is completely stunned. Then she cuts him off and asks like it's nothing, "Have you never heard of the fairy?" Sherba, rattled and on edge, blurts out if she's really a fairy, because he's never seen anything like a real one before. The little girl, barely bigger than a palm, has long hair and glowing wings that catch the light, and she flutters right up to him, drifting gracefully as if she belongs in the sky. Flustered, she snaps that he shouldn't stare at her like that. It's embarrassing, period. Cheryl clocks his mistake, blurts out a rapid apology, and she crosses her arms, staring him down like, "So, don't you have something to say?" But the poor guy just looks totally lost. He squeezes his brain for an answer and blurts out that it's an honor to meet her, only for the fairy to huff in pure frustration and snap that it's not that at all. She shakes her head and grills him. Who does he think saved him from the waterfall? Because if she hadn't stepped in, he'd have face-planted into it and become fish food. The second Shuro hears that, he's instantly grateful, dropping into a deep bow like he's paying respect for his life. The girl plants her hands on her hips and snaps. "So what were you doing in the river?" Like it's some weird hobby, and the young man blurts that it's not what it looks like. This happened in a flash and it's a long story. After he explains, she just shakes her head and goes, "So it really was monsters, and that was seriously dangerous." She cracks jokes, calls him weak, and demands where he even came from. Then Shuri shoots back that he's from Menorich, a tiny town west of here. Her eyes flare wide with pure shock, and she blurts the name of Norwich again and again. He points to the human world and asks if he can take her there. Then the young man stares at her, stunned, and fires back. "Why are you so curious?" Wondering if she's ever even been to this town before. The fairy pouts and demands, "So is that a no?" The sheriff scratches his head, says, "I can take you maybe," but only after he asks who she knows in town. The fairy grins and says she's got a human guy. She gushes that he's a little taller than Shuru, with gorgeous eyes and a smooth, cool smile, and that his eyes and hair both shine like the sky itself. She leaned in and begged, "Do you know him, Shuru?" But the kid shook his head and said, "Just because we're the same race doesn't mean we all know every human." Then he turned the question around and demanded, "So what was his name?" The little fairy goes quiet, shakes her head, and admits she has no idea what to say. Before Shuru, that human was the only one she'd ever met, so she just named him Kamen. Shiori can't help but replay it in his head, convinced he could have turned into a hunter, or even chased his dreams as an adventurer. The young man says her words about him sound almost romantic, then asks if she and the human she just mentioned are a couple, only for the fairy to give him a quick tap on the forehead and pull a face like, "Are you really an idiot?" She swears a fairy and a human could never have a real relationship like that, so they're just friends, really good friends. The room filled with "you two are totally best friends" vibes, and the fairy didn't even pause, she confirmed it right away. The young man takes a quick pause, thanks her, and asks if she knows the forest, because she's somehow reading the place like it's nothing. The fairy smiles and says, "Yes," because she was born and raised right in the Guyana forest. He's fired up about the opening and throws out a deal if she leads him through this part of the forest. He'll take her straight to Ninorich. Then he leans in and asks what she thinks. The fairy's eyes sparkle with pure joy as she leans in and demands, "Are you serious? And will you really take me to the city?" She snatches up the proposal without a second thought, promises she'll guard Shuru on the way, then tells him to lock in and watch her technique. Then she shoots one hand up and slices the air with a wind cut, an earth-shaking blast of gusts that topples even a few trees right around them. When Shuru unleashed that attack's power, the shock hit him so hard his eyes went wide open. He asks if it was really necessary, and the fairy plants her hands on her hips, saying she's not exactly great at controlling her magic. But who cares? Because the real deal is that she's insanely strong. To prove it, she flexes those arm muscles like she's showing off her power, then flashes a grin and tells him the rhinoceros beetles attacked earlier, and she scared them off all by herself. As everything clicks back into place, Shura realizes the truth. She's the one who caused those injuries to the insects. And then, right when it matters, he finally says the puzzle pieces are falling into place. Shiro thrusts his hand out and declares they've got a deal. Then he turns to the fairy and introduces himself with full formality. The girl tilts her head, taps her chin, and shakes her head like she's stunned, muttering that his name sounds weird, but she still accepts it. Then she smirks and says, "I'm Patty Folly Lou." Shiro grins and says, "From now on, I'm your commander." But Patty throws her arms across her chest, pouts hard, and snaps that she hates it, because from this moment on, Shiro should call her Chief. The young man bursts out laughing and shoots back. "Yes, Chief," fully playing along, and Patty's grin widens as she looks satisfied. Then she leans in and asks him to say it again. Yeah, she shouts for her chief, and the fairy instantly goes wild, spinning in the air around him. Shiori watches her reaction and asks if she liked that chief, but Patty frowns and demands why he talked like that. So the young man slumps and snaps, saying only lackeys speak that way, yet Patty won't trash the guy, she just tells him to stop. Then he blurts that she should go by Captain, and she snaps right back. No way. Shura bursts back into his teasing, calling her Milady, and insisting that since she saved his life, he'll do everything he can to carry out her wishes, only for her to shut that down too, because she won't have that either. Meg tumbles down, and they crank up a campfire. As everyone huddles around the firelight, Patty stares at the dancing flames and asks whether Shuru still aches for his friends. The young man tilted his head to the sky and shot back. Of course, because they were his companions after all, and while he was talking, his friends were probably out there tearing the area apart to find him. All fired up, Patty blurts out that she's made her choice. She's going to track down his friends and help them. Shiro asks if she's really sure, and the fairy shoots back. "I'm his chief. This is my job, so trust me to handle it." Then leans in and asks if the young man is hungry. Shura finally clocks that he hasn't eaten a thing all day, and Patty plants her hands on her hips and snaps that since he's her subordinate, she's gonna make sure he gets fed. Suddenly, a blinding light rips through his vision. He jolts, blinks hard, and when his sight finally clears, Shiru's stunned. Patty leans in, worried, asking if something's wrong or if he just isn't hungry. But all he can think is how she can store things too, and that idea hits him like pure amazement. Patty swings her hands and slams a huge, glowing magic circle into the air. It pulses with raw energy, and with one dramatic flicker, a portal tears open right in front of her. With a soft flick of her hand, she plucks a fruit straight out of the portal, grin blazing in her eyes as she locks onto Shuru, who can barely believe what he's seeing. The fairy tilts her head, smugly curious, and asks him if he's never watched someone use the inventory skill the way she does. And just like that, it hits Shuru hard. Patty has this power too, and he thought something that rare was out of reach. He struggles to get a question out, but the fairy jumps in first, buzzing with excited, slightly proud energy. And then she lays it out. Among fairies, special abilities aren't rare at all, and tons of them share the same power, a pocket magical space that lets you stash items inside. She keeps rummaging through her inventory like she's digging up treasure, flipping the invisible stuff around and pulling out one object after another, all while looking quietly impressed. And then she finally spots a tiny, shiny glass bottle packed with golden liquid that sparkles like magic in the light. Right as a mischievous fairy grins and offers Shuru a sip of the special mead she brewed herself. Her voice is breezy and sure when she promises it'll warm him up and knock the tension loose. And even though Shuru stalls for a second, the sweet, tempting smell drags him in. So he raises the bottle, drinks, and the warmth floods his body while a rush of pure, intense pleasure hits him instantly. He blurts out in shocked delight that the mead tastes insanely good, and Patty swells with pride as she brags that she made it herself. Then she tells Shuru to go ahead and drink all he wants, because she's got plenty saved up, so he has nothing to worry about. The fairy's face hardens into determination as she turns and vows to stay on guard all night, making sure nothing sneaks up on them while they sleep. With a calm, commanding voice, Hattie tells Shuru to finish his drink, then drop down and rest for a bit. No debate, this is an order you can't ignore. The alcohol is already easing his body and tugging at his eyelids, so Shuru just grins back, grateful. It shuts up and obeys. He squeezes his eyes shut and gives in, letting the rest take over. Next morning, Patty was sprawled comfortably on the young man's head when he jolted awake, and she started chatting like crazy, telling him the forest is packed with other races, friendly ones and ones that will tear you apart. She even warned him about brutal orcs and gigantic, terrifying ogres, all brains with no brains for tricks, just raw power and non-stop aggression. Then she whipped her finger toward a distant stretch and lit up, saying he could find elves too. Mysterious, exotic beings who live in harmony with nature. Patty admitted that out of pure curiosity she once tried to sneak into their territory, and the second she got close, elves slammed up a magical barrier that kept outsiders out, and even out of sight. She tried again, got nowhere, and finally stormed off, grumbling that those elves were so shut off and guarded it was ridiculous. Shiro listens hard, then throws his head back and groans out a tired sigh, asking for a quick break because his legs are fried from all that walking. The fairy folds her arms and snaps that he's stopping again, but after a beat she relents, only if it's for a short moment. As they finally catch their breath, Petty spots an exotic flower, points it out, and like the expert she is, tells him it's a babunia bloom, warning that its nectar tastes wildly peculiar and downright awful. Shore twists his expression into a curious frown, and the fairy keeps rambling on, buzzing with excitement, telling him that once she accidentally drank that nectar and regretted it so hard the awful taste haunted her mouth. Shiri then clocks Patty's weird habit, always rattling off random stuff, stuffing his head with curious but useless facts, until he realizes this place was part of an ancient country long before Patty was even born. That nation crumbled into ruins, and over the centuries, its cities vanished under a jungle so thick and untouchable it swallowed everything, until people called it the Forest of Guinea. The young man frowned and shot a question. Did all of this really happen in the days of the ancient magical civilization? Patty snapped back on the spot, impatient as ever. How on earth could she possibly know, since it all went down long before she was even born? Shiro just lets out a sigh and drops the argument, until her sharp senses catch a weird presence out of nowhere, and suddenly her whole attitude flips. She grabs Shiro and barks for him to hide right now, no questions asked. Right before they can move, shouts tear through the air, "Shiro!" And it's the Azure Flash adventurers charging into the forest to find him. Rolf's voice booms out, asking if anyone can hear them, while Lyra looks nearly panicked. Then he blurts that he'd be devastated if Shiro was dead. But before he can go further, Neska swings in with her staff and smacks him down, barking that he can't speak like that. The warrior wipes his tears in a flash, steals his voice, and declares, "I know Shiro's alive." Neska's face softens. She slips a hand over his head, soothing him like she's right there with him, and the moment she nods, it's clear he was right. Shiro was fine. Then Hilfa darts between the trees, hunting for her. And when Shura finally hears his companions' voices, he jerks up on the spot, stomping right over Patty's protests, calling him an idiot for pulling that move so fast. Shira reassures her that those weren't strangers at all. They were his friends, his precious companions. Then the young man yells at them, "I'm here." They all snap their heads toward him. Then terror hit, because Kilfa was gone, snatched away by a bird. The second she lays eyes on him, she slams the bird out of the way, breaks free, and plummets straight toward him. The cat drops down and smacks Shiri right in the face with a full-force jolt of those ample curves, and the whole crew just stares, baffled, like, "Wait, what was all that noise?" Tears blazing in her eyes, Kilful crashes into the young man's arms and whispers that she truly believed he was dead. She showers him with kisses, swearing she'll never let go, and the whole group bows to Shuru, until the young man cuts in, insisting he's fine and telling them to lift their heads. Liar tangled in guilt, she apologized to him, reminding him she'd promised to protect him and still couldn't keep that promise. Neska then says this is the second time he's saved her life, and she swears she'll pay him back. So it basically tells them, he's alive, he's okay, and he's back with his friends, and that's what finally matters, even as they start to shout and protest. Then the young man snaps back and asks if they weren't friends, and Liar stammers that, yeah, of course they were. While Kilfa adds that their leader was a total fool, so they start needling Liar and laughing their heads off. Rolfin admits he's blown away that Shira pulled himself back, only for Shira to shoot back that he didn't come home quite on his own. He introduces Patty, tucked behind a tree, and the adventurers stare in pure shock. Then Shira drops the bombshell. She's a fairy and his boss, and he's alive only because she saved him. The whole crew is reeling with shock, and they demand he explain everything right now. Fairies were basically myths, so rare they were called the Ghost Tribe, because they almost never even showed up around the other races. Shuru blurts out to Patty, "Is that really true?" And the fairy stalls, admitting they weren't meant to leave their territory because the rules forbid it. The young man says he figured they were normal guys, because the guild was literally called the Blessing of the Fairies. Patty snaps back, annoyed, demanding why they should hand their blessing to humans at all. Then Shura fires back, claiming that maybe, just maybe, a fairy once blessed a human before. Neska fires off a question. Then the young man freezes, totally thrown, and blurts, "Wait, what don't I know?" Seeing the young man's cluelessness, the sorceress snaps, "Fairy's blessing. That's just a booze, an alcoholic drink only fairies can brew, and some call it fairy-made." She rushes back to Patty and demands, "Was it the drink I gave him?" The fairy lifts her chin, proud as can be, and the Neska alarm bells blast as he jolts awake, and the shout demands, "Did he really down that fairy mead?" Sherba can't decide who to stare at, Liar or Neska, because the group keeps slamming him with question after question. They press the young man hard, asking if he really chugged fairy mead, because one glass would be enough to buy a whole castle. Rolf shoots back fast that the guild's records show the last time any was sold was 200 years ago. The young man freezes when he hears how rare that drink really is. Then Patty shrugs and admits she handed it to him only because he's her subordinate. The warrior is totally baffled by what's going on, but the sheriff just smirks and says, "It's a long story." Then he fills his companions in, only for everyone to go wide-eyed when they realize he was rescued by a fairy. Lyra rushes up to Patty to thank her for rescuing their companion, and with a grateful grin, promises he'll do anything to return the favor. Shioru then leans in and asks if he can help them hunt for this mystery person, because the fairy's clues are basically useless. But he's not backing out. They're ready to jump into the search together. With all the adventurers finally gathered, they lock eyes, then turn back and sprint straight for Nanorak. After a while of walking, the city finally comes into view, and the fairy's eyes light up with pure awe. Patty jabs a finger forward, urging Shuru to look at the human's home. But the sorceress cuts her off, correcting her. This isn't a village, it's a city. Nesca steps in and explains that settlements get different names based on their size, and the fairy echoes the words, repeating them like she's finally got it. And Lyra tells Shuru that life as a subordinate is brutal. Patty spots a figure way off in the distance and demands, "Who's that?" Then, the closer they get, and there's Anna, already waiting at the city entrance for Shuru. A little girl wears a crushed, desolate look, and the young man, worry blazing in his eyes, demands why she's all alone here. Then Aina bolts forward and hugs him tight. Breaking down into tears, Stella strides up and blurts, "You're finally here." The Azure Flash group throws out their final goodbyes, and Aina's mother blurts that the poor girl hasn't slept a wink. She's been so worried about Shiro. The young man offers to carry Anna, but Stella shuts it down fast, saying that in just a few years, that little girl will be too big to lift. So she's determined to keep holding her daughter, while she still has the chance. Shioru starts to panic when Stella looks wiped out, and Yura keeps teasing her, saying that even so, she'll tell Shioru the moment it gets too heavy to carry. She digs in her heels and snaps that she's not saying a word, and she'd never hand Anna over to him because Anna is her daughter. The young man walks them back home, then, right when they arrive, he leans in to say goodbye, wishing Anna good night, but as he turns to leave, Stella suddenly calls out, "Wait, I forgot something." Stella then grins and tells him, "You're always welcome in my home." Shore sprints back to the shop, and Patty's jaw drops when she realizes just how massive the place is. The young man asks what kind of homes fairies live in, and Patty grins. "We build our houses way up in the trees, so the monsters can't ever get to us." The fairy dodges the conversation and snaps, asking Shuru if he still remembers their deal. Then Shuru nods and promises he'll help her hunt down her friend, swearing that in a town this small it won't take long at all. Excited to the core, they lock in a plan to search tomorrow and seal it with a punchy, enthusiastic fist bump. Shuru demands the fairy of the sweet maid her secret. He wants to know how she used the heart he handed her, while Patty grins and says it's a breeze if you've got honey. Trying to get honey is a nightmare. Last time she went after it, bees swarmed her, and she barely made it out alive. As she's talking, the young man yanks open his backpack, snatches out a jar of honey, and asks if it'll do the trick. Patty spots the jar, nods right away, and can't help but be impressed he somehow pulled it off. She stares closer, eyes wide, totally stunned, then blurts out, "Wait, is that really honey?" Shuru nods and swears it's 100% pure, straight from the bee's hive. The fairy dips a finger into the honey, tastes a tiny drop, and then freezes. Because the flavor is so dangerously delicious, it blows her mind. Beaming, she swears her mead will taste even sweeter with that honey, and Shuru leans in, asking if she's really sure. The young man says, "All right, time to rest," and he soars straight from the forest floor into sleep. Morning crashes in, and Shuru is sprawled on the couch with a fairy sitting right on his head, until Aina bursts in and wakes them both up. The young man shoots a question, asking what she's doing there. Then Stella tells him he won't be opening the shop that day, and the little girl snaps back that she came bearing food for him. Aina steps in, eyes locked on the scene, and with a spark of curiosity in her voice, she asks who that girl sitting on the young man's head is. Shuru tells her it's his new boss, Patty, and that Patty's a fairy, and the second he says it, his eyes light up like he just saw magic, and he can't help but ask if she's the kind of fairy she's been reading about in those picture books. Patty demands, "Who's that kid?" And the young man steps in, introducing Aina with a proud grin. She's his assistant at the shop. The fairy pivots the conversation and leans in, asking the little girl if she knows any man with eyes as blue as the sky and hair dyed the same wild shade. Anna snaps back that she's never done it, and she's never even seen anyone leave Patty feeling that crushed. But Shiro cuts in fast, telling everyone that he and Ina don't even know all the residents. But it's a tiny town. He figures if they start asking questions, they'll find him fast. He asked Patty if she wanted to kick off the search right now, and Anna jumped in instantly, thrilled to help. Patty asks the girl straight up if she truly wants to help, and Anna immediately confirms, lighting the fairy's face up as it blurts a tiny squeal of joy. Then Shura cuts in and says they've got to find a way to hide the fairy. Anna pitches the idea of stuffing the fairy in her backpack, and sure enough, the little fairy feels right at home inside the bag. With everything finally settled, they took off in a hurry to track down Patty's friend. Shira strides up to a whole crowd of people. He flashes a picture of a necklace with a pendant, then nobody has a clue what it is. At the town hall, Elle plays dumb about whether she's seen him before, then tries to pin it on something simple, like, names would make this easier. Meanwhile, Gerald the merchant stares blankly, swearing he doesn't recognize a thing he's ever sold. And the dog and the mercenary and the bar still have zero idea who it really belongs to. Shuri stared at the picture, hooked, because he'd questioned 27 people, and not one of them recognized the pendant. Aina whispers that maybe the fairy's friend came from somewhere else, but Patty snaps back. He said it himself. I live in Ninrik. All they needed to kick off the search were those matching necklaces. So Shira snapped a photo of Patty's pendant and brought it straight to the townspeople. Karen suddenly bursts in, scanning the place, demanding to find the young man, and she wants him now. Fans whisper that he's teamed up with Liar for another wild mission, so she snaps at him, demanding, when are you finally going to stop scaring me like this? The young man rushes in with an apology, but Karen waves it off and tells him he doesn't need to. She just blurts out, I'm happy you're okay. Ruffling his hair, Anna points out that his face is blazing red, but Shira snaps back, insisting he's just hot. Trying to dodge the topic, he holds up a photo of the pendant for Karen, and she studies it like her life depends on it. She swears it feels like she's been there before, like the memory's right on the tip of her tongue, but she can't grab where it's from. The mayor tells him, if I remember anything, I'll come back and tell you. He leans in, asking if she'd really go that far. Karen grins and says, I still owe you after all the times you helped me. She waves goodbye, then promises she'll still swing by the guild. Karen smiles and teases that she's definitely not heading to a mill, even though he asks. She's about to confront the Azure Flash group, the very people who put her dear friend in danger. She drops the threatening aura, and the young man blurts that he'll go instead, only for the mayor to shrug, pivot, and walk off. Shura prayed that his friends, Liar, Neska, Rolf, and Kulthar, were safe, and the second Karen left, Anna leaned in and asked Shura if Patty could sleep in her bed. The young man leaned in and demanded, so what do you really think, fairy? And Patty nervously admits she's fine staying with that little girl, but only for her mate. Shiro then laughs and calls her a tiny, sundeer fairy. Anna bursts through the door clutching her backpack like it's precious, then tells her mom, I've got to show you something. But she'll have to lock it away as a secret. Stella freezes for a second, then nods and promises she won't tell, only to ask, so what exactly is it? The little girl says it's in her bag, and Stella swears it's either a lizard or a frog, until the girl swings open the backpack and the truth hits hard. And tucked inside the fairy, Patty Bombard interrogates Stella, grilling her with one question after another. Are you Anna's mother? And pointing out that her eyes look exactly like the little girl's. When Stella spots a fairy right in front of her, her whole body locks up in shock, and that freaks Anna out so bad she can't help but worry. Patty springs onto the bed Sharuba hands to Stella and Ine, bouncing like a spring as she grins and blurts that she's never slept on anything this soft. Stella swings by with a few cups of tea to share, then leans in and asks what kind of guy Patty was talking about. Anna blurts that she wants answers too, and for a second the fairy goes completely silent, then shyly swings in, saying she'll spill the whole truth. The fairy still remembers the moment it all kicked off, her very first time leaving fairy territory. And deep in the forest, a young man was out there hunting a unicorn rabbit. Patty wasn't even sure what he grabbed, but one thing was clear. It sent a twig screaming through the air at insane speed. The young man's aim was trash with the bow, and every time he missed, his face crumpled like he was 1 second away from tears. He looked like a total little kid, and Patty couldn't stop laughing, so hard her stomach actually started to hurt. After all that crying, she finally snapped. Then she swung with pinpoint precision and drove a hit straight into the unicorn rabbit. And the young man shot her a stunned look, eyes huge with shock. He leaned in and asked, "Are you a fairy?" and that one question sparked their first meeting. Right after that wild run-in, the unicorn rabbit got eaten, and the young man just couldn't stop sobbing, blubbering over and over about how amazing it was. At first, the fairy figured humans had the strangest tastes around, because she took one bite and almost spit it out. It was that awful. Then the young man finally admitted the brutal truth. He hadn't eaten properly in around 10 straight days. The young man bowed to the fairy who saved him, thanking her with all his heart, and then demanded to know her name. She hesitated, remembering every cruel thing those other humans did to her, then snapped back that she'd help once he got better at hunting. And with that, the days dragged on. And they stayed side by side, hunting like a dream team, until one day they finally leveled up and got insanely good. The young guy leaned in and asked Patty if he hadn't already been proven enough, then begged her to speak up for him in her own name. The fairy was buzzing with excitement because she was finally about to introduce herself. Then right when she opened her mouth to say her name, the memory of being called a cursed child hit her like a curse. She choked up and refused to say it, promising she'd tell him later, and the young man panicked, then swallowed it and let her go. And that moment became the last time they ever saw each other. Patty breaks it to Anna. He'd always been her friend, always saying they were lonely, and then, the day they finally met, they realized they could be lonely together. The fairy blurts that she has to track him down, so she can finally tell him her name, and she demands he give his name too. Patty admits she wound up rambling. When the water hits her, she blurts, "Is it raining?" But Anna whips around, tears pouring down her face, and swears they'll find her friend for sure. The fairy stared at the little girl, eyes soft with emotion, and then nodded, promising that they would definitely find him. 2 hours before all this, Shuru steps out of a portal in just his undergarments and a towel, then decides the perfect moment is a steaming hot bath at his own place, so he heads straight to the shop's balcony to catch the sunset. Right then, Liar suddenly pops up and demands his attention, so the young man tells him to wait because he'll come down and meet him. As Shiri closes in, panic hits. This warrior's face is swollen like he's been beaten. The young man demands answers. What happened to Liar? And the warrior cuts him off fast, insisting it's nothing. Karen burst into the guild furious, and Lyra snapped, "Did you come here just to scream, since you know we took Shuru on a dangerous adventure?" The mayor shot back, "Yes, and no special exceptions," so Lyra suggested she should just slap or punch him if it'd help her cool off. Karen swings with everything she's got and slaps Liar across the face, and the warrior instantly crumples out of balance. Azure Flash's leader leans in and asks Shuri if she'll come grab drinks with them at the guild, promising Ami and the guildmaster will be there too. So Shuri smiles and says it sounds fun. The crew crowds into the guild's bar, clink-clink glasses flying up as pure joy hits. Then Liar starts a countdown, and the moment it hits 0, they all erupt into cheers right there together, with Kilfa, Emil, and May lifting their glasses too. Shuru and Liar chug their drinks, and Rolf just watches. Then the young man goes deep in thought, and Liar leans in asking if something's wrong. Shuru blurts that he hates the beer, then immediately turns red, apologizes, and looks totally mortified. But Nay insists it's pointless, and honestly, she's not really into it either. Emmy fires off the question if he's serious, and the guildmaster snaps back with a yes, like he couldn't even bring himself to say it out loud. The place barely had any alcoholic drinks, and if they could serve something better, maybe adventurers wouldn't come in so pissed off. It was heartbreaking, but the numbers still didn't make it worth it. Kilfa admits she'd still love a little wine or cider, even if it's tangy and smells amazing. Right then, Neska cuts in, warning her not to ask for too much, and Shuru blurts out, "So the wine here is really that sour?" And the Liar, already a little drunk, shoots him a question, "You never had wine? Or does this incredible merchant only ever sip the fancy stuff?" Shura snaps back, saying he hasn't, but in his homeland, those great wines are everywhere and cheap as can be. He breaks it down for them, 3 kinds of wine, red, white, and rosé, and the adventurers are blown away. Shuru says he'd even heard of orange wine, but every kind brings its own punch. Some are sweet, some are dry, some feel crisp and refreshing, and others hit hard and taste full-bodied. Prices swing wildly too. Some are cheap enough for a few coins, while others cost so much you could buy a whole house with a garden. The folks who actually know what they're doing pick their drink based on the meal, and Shuru. He's a sake guy, because even sake comes in different flavors like ginger and jamai. Suddenly, Shuru locks eyes with the room. Everybody in the bar is staring at him. Then an older adventurer leans in and tells him to go on. Shuru admits his homeland had countless operations across different countries, so they brewed and served every kind of drink. Everyone around him glares with shining eyes, and Shiro freezes mid-breath. To realize this was a goldmine business opportunity. If you played it right, you could pull off 3 wins with one move. Then the young man whipped around to face the crowd, and he tells them to swing back in 3 days and vows that when he returns, he'll haul drinks from his homeland for everyone. At that moment, Shiro wasn't at all like his usual self. He was prepping for something big, slipping into a new look, smoothing his hair back, and dressing up in classy clothes like a bartender stepping into the spotlight. Aina lights up and tells him he looks super stylish, and he grins and thanks her. Then Aina slides in that he looks great too, and he fires back that she's stunning and totally professional. For one night, he shoved a tiny bar up at the end of the guild's recreation hall, and when Lyre finally shows up, she's like, "Everyone looked so elegant." Then he snaps back, asking if Anna's been working the place too. They greet each other right away, and Sherry doesn't want the little girl stuck working the bar, but the girl won't back down, insists on helping, and even drags her own mother along. Nesko barrels in, grinning that everything's set. She's already conjured ice with her magic, and Kilful's on the move too, sliding drinks into everyone's hands. They made sure everyone got what they wanted. Neska grabbed chocolate liquor and Kilfa went for fruit wine. Then the young man turned to Anna and asked, "What about you? You want something too?" She hesitates, then admits she wants gin, but that's when the little girl grins and corrects her. She wants ginger ale, a soda. Right at that moment, the crowd starts chanting, asking if they can finally drink yet, and Shiro beams, thanking everyone for their patience. And then the celebration explodes into motion. With perfect manners, he steps forward and tells everyone his name, Shiro, the proud owner of Shiro's shop. He even hauls drinks straight from his shop to keep things going after the forest missions. And people are stunned, since even the city's richest merchant can't possibly be that loaded. Schubert adds that he's got enough snacks to match, and some adventurers start whispering that maybe he's secretly an alchemist, but honestly nobody cares, because everyone only wants one thing, top-tier drinks. Then Shiro yells that everything's free and they can drink non-stop, and the crowd erupts like a festival just blew up in their faces. The young man's stomach twists because he just dropped 3 million yen on goods, and that thought won't let him breathe. He treats it like pure gold, an investment, and calls the guild master, Nameraj, to speak up for a moment. Nay greets everyone with a warm smile, tells them to soak up the night, and warns them to stay ready to work the next day. Their mouths are watering, so the adventurers erupt in cheers and shove forward to place their orders, boxing Shiro into a corner. Then Ni notices the chaos and pounds the ground hard. With a razor-sharp, intimidating vibe, she warns that she can shut the whole event down if they want out. So Shiro gives her a grateful nod, and the crowd quickly lines up in orderly rows. Lyre goes first and asks the warrior what he wants to drink, then points at a bottle and wants to know what it is. So the young man grins and says it's bottled beer, adding that he can't recommend it enough. After that recommendation, Lyre points at the drink and goes for it. Then Anna leans in and says, "Squeeze in some lemon juice and it'll taste even better." Azure Flash's leader follows the little girl's idea, takes a sip, and his eyes light up at the flavor, sparkling, light, and made even more addictive by that sharp, punchy lemon acidity. He grabs the mug and chugs a huge gulp. Then Shiro jumps in, saying a tiny pinch of salt would make it even better, and suddenly everyone around him is craving that exact same drink. Everyone's swiping for the drink, and Shiro leans over to Stella, grabs the bottle on his right, and shoots in a Mexican mix. Exhausted from the grind, the young man clocks how everything's finally going right, people are loving it, until the next customer steps up. With a smug smirk, he orders a strong drink. They demanded the strongest drink they had, and the Sun adventurers instantly recognized him as Eldos the Indestructible, one of the 16 heroes. Shiro fires back, asking if that's truly what he wants, the strongest drink, and then pitches one named Spurious, so brutal it could ignite a fire just by tasting it. Eldos serves it in a tiny glass, and the second Shiro sees it, Eldos snaps, calling him a kid with an angry glare and insisting he's over 200 years old, so he shouldn't be treated like one. Shiro snaps back and says, "It's not like that. The drink is so brutal, one sip and you'll drop to the ground," pointing out it hits 96% alcohol, but Eldos flares up harder, insisting he's never been drunk a day in his life. The young man snaps at him to calm down, warning that all that booze could actually kill him. Then the adventurer lets out a heavy sigh like, "All right, let's see how far this goes." He rips off his cloak and tells Shiro, "If you want to fight, let's take it outside the bar." Right then, Rolf steps in, introducing himself as a humble cleric. Eldos whips around and asks if the priest is here to preach, and Rolf admits the kid just crushed his pride by insulting him as a dwarf who drinks straight from barrels, like alcohol is basically in his blood. Then, Cool as ice, Rolf says he gets how Eldos feels and asks if he's not being too rude, can he offer a suggestion. The dwarf fires back, so what's the move? And the cleric answers, use a healing spell, one that's usually for poison, because it can also calm the symptoms of intoxication. Whipping his head toward Shirov, he says, if Eldos gets sick from that alcohol, I can bring him back. Would that be okay? And just like that, everyone nods and agrees. Elda said she figured that drink would drop him to his knees, because in all his years, he'd already survived lethal monsters, crushed the demon lord, even brought down the ancient dragon and more. So yeah, they'd never get a laugh out of him, since his knees had never once kissed the ground before. The second the legendary monsters get mentioned, the whole crowd erupts, and they roar for the dwarf from the 16 heroes. Then Shiryu spots it. Eldos suddenly looks way bigger, and without wasting a breath, Eldos demands a drink. The dwarf throws down a bet. If he gets drunk, Shiryu can demand anything he wants. Shiryu asks what happens if Eldos loses, and Eldos snaps back that Shiryu will have to keep him supplied with drinks for life. Then he stretches his mug out like a dare, and tells him to pour until it spills over. Shiryu nods and straight up accepts the bet, and right away the dwarf leans in, sniffs the drink, and goes, "Whoa, that smell is brutal, way stronger than anything I've ever tasted." He leans in, eyes glinting as the curious crowd stares, and he pulls the whole trick down to the very last drop for the mother. Shiryu's eyes went wide as the dwarf let out a heavy sigh, saying his stomach feels like it's burning up, and then he slapped a bet mug down on the counter. He squares off with the young man, dead serious, and asks if he looks drunk. Sherwin jerks a hand to the back of his neck, admits he misjudged him, and admits he just lost the bet. Eldos erupts into laughter, and says now the young man has to hand over free drinks anytime he wants. And he keeps laughing until his legs give out, crashing backward onto the floor, completely wasted. The young man scolds Eldos for guzzling too much at once, saying he'd already warned him. If Rolf hadn't stepped in, Eldos might have died on the spot, claiming hero points he didn't earn. He calls it sheer disrespect to alcohol, and the dwarf nods right along. Then the other adventurers start gaping like, we've never seen Eldos embarrassed before. All those fights and still, one night with alcohol finally knocked him flat. They're like, wait, what was that drink called? And one adventurer blurts, I think it was Spy something. Then the crew starts tossing around names, even joking about calling it the hero killer. No one realizes Shura is about to unleash something that'll rip across the continent like a storm. The Guild Hall was packed with adventurers sprawled on the floor, wrecked from drinking themselves into oblivion. And with her face blazing red, Neska swore she'd never tasted anything that good in her whole life. Kilfa then vowed to grab some and carry it back to her people, and Liar of sobbing, still sniffling, just kept asking if they'd really finished every last drop of Shuru's stock. Shuru says he poured a lot of work into it, and now every adventurer is going to be hooked on his drinks. Then Liar stares, stunned, because this is the legendary merchant she'd only ever heard rumors about. The young man says that if the event can melt even a bit of tension, then he's all for it. Right then, two adventurers start slugging it out, then slosh past the fight and collapse into sleep together like drunken wrecking balls. And he laughs that it's even more hilarious since Anna keeps making tons of deliveries at the guild. Kid Alpha pats Sheru on the back, calling him a real good guy, and Sheru complains it hurt, but the cat shoots back that she barely hit him. Liar demands to know what the real goal of that night was, but the warrior only glares into a box, saying he spotted fairy wings peeking out from inside. Yeah, he swivels toward her and asks if the front of her head showed up. Patty's eyes drop as she says, "No, it didn't." Then the young man scoffs that he must not be an adventurer, and the fairy starts blurting out apologies. Shira had pushed herself so far for her, and now that young man and the warrior stared at her with raw, sympathetic heartbreak. Days went by, and still no word came from Patty's friend. The young guy flashed that pendant to everyone in the city, but not a single soul recognized it. Still, he didn't even bother stapling posters, and yet nothing came of it. Maybe it meant he'd already vanished out of town. Since there are tons of human cities out there, Patty asked if there were only around 20. Then Anna snapped her arms wide and said, "No way, it's way more than that." And Patty's face fell, because she never imagined there'd be this many and now had no clue how she was supposed to find her friend, until Karen slammed on the door and called for Shuru. The young man freezes when he spots the mayor, and Karen wearing that grim face like she just uncovered who they've been hunting. She presses on, saying she knew she'd seen that pendant before, so she tore through her house and turned up answers. Then she clicks open a little box and pulls out a necklace with an identical pendant to Patty's, and Shira recognizes it instantly. The mayor claims the jewel was her great-great-grandfather's, the very first mayor of Menorich, so Aina blurts out, "What even is a great-great-grandfather?" And Shuru fires back, "It's your grandfather's grandfather." Karen then wonders why they'd hunt down someone like that, and before anyone can answer, the fairy cuts in, because she asked. The mayor's jaw drops when he spots a fairy, and he blurts, "Wait, what's happening here?" The young man lays out the entire story, and Karen's stunned beyond belief, because her ancestor was something a fairy truly knew. Then Patty fires off the question, "So where was he?" And the mayor just blanks, like he has no clue what she's talking about. The fairy claims Karen is the daughter of her friend's son's son, and when Karen agrees if they're related, Patty keeps pushing and says Karen should know where he was. Karen's confusion spirals until the moment it all clicks, and she finally gets what's going on. Then she turns to Patty and blurts, "So how long does a fairy live usually?" Patty fires back that her clan claims they live around 3,000 years, but she's only 300. Then the mayor calmly tells her that for humans, even hitting 100 is a miracle. And her great-great-grandfather had died years ago, and Patty just couldn't believe it. She suddenly remembered how everyone rejected her back then. No one ever showed her an ounce of love. Her own parents despised her, and she finally snapped to the truth. If she walked out the door, nobody would even miss her. On a full moon night, she threw the rules out the window, taking off into the sky, racing out of the territory, until she finally found her friend. It was the first time anyone stared at her with kind, gentle eyes, and the first time someone thanked her and smiled like it truly mattered. For the first time in her life, she finally had someone to play with and to team up with in the fight. It was the first time anyone dared risk their life just to shield her. It was the very first time anyone had ever handed her a gift. The pendant became their living promise of friendship. She replayed that heart-melting moment with him, because the boy who'd never had a friend suddenly found a best friend. It was the very first time she cried from pure joy, and the moment he asked her name, fear surged in her chest like she was about to lose everything. A tiny voice inside her head hissed, "Tell him your name and this friendship shatters." She was so terrified she never even managed to introduce herself, always promising, "I'll tell you my name another time." But he didn't push at all. He just smiled and said he was waiting for that day. Patty freezes for a second, letting the truth hit. Her friend is gone. Then she blurts the thing that hurts the most. The only place she ever felt she belonged was right beside him. Aina and Shuru watch her with heavy, aching sympathy. They press her for answers, what she's doing next and whether she'll ever come back to the other fairies. And with her head drooping, she confesses she has nowhere to go, then drops the real bombshell. She's been keeping a secret because she was actually exiled from fairy. She raises her shirt and shows him the mark branded on her belly, and Shurba demands what it means. She explains that it's the symbol of a walking disaster tied to fairies. Patty blurts that she's always believed the world would have been better off if she'd never existed, and even her own parents couldn't stand her for it. Still, somehow, she managed to live a pretty normal life. Until a swarm of rhinoceros beetles built nests right near the fairy territory, hundreds of them, and then they started stalking and hunting the fairies for food. Once the nest was finished, they went on a rapid binge of baby-making, then slipped away and vanished before the food supply ran dry. So the other fairies snapped and started pointing the finger at Patty. Shurigo blew up, furious that they'd just dumped the blame on her, insisting it was Patty's fault the monsters picked that spot to build their nest. Patty snaps and admits the curse is exactly why it's her fault, because the clan leader was the one who picked the name Patty Falulu for her. In the fairy tongue, it meant the one who slices through destiny, so Isekai'D named her that to stop the curse from taking over her life, and yet he still exiled her anyway. Patty can't help but call it out as pure irony. Shuro tells her, "That's what happened when I saved you." The fairy smirks and says, "I figured if I grabbed that dumb human, he'd help me track down my friend." But in the end, she was the biggest fool of all. Anna just stares at the fairy, tears pouring, while Patty rubs her head and whispers that she can't cry, because if the little girl breaks, Patty will break too. Then the two of them collapse into a tight hug, sobbing together. Shuru steps up and asks if he can ask a question, and the young man leans in like, "Would Patty want to save the fairies?" She snaps back right away, yes, she'll do it. Then Shuru presses harder, "You still want to even after they kicked you out?" She drops her head, shoulders heavy, and says she has to repay the leader for giving her a name, and her parents are still trapped there, waiting. No matter how much they hated her, they were still her parents, so she had to step in. Close enough to the tiny fairy, Shuru leans in and asks why they don't go there to rescue them. Patty leans in and asks if he can really pull that off, and the young man grins and promises, "Yeah, I've got this." Patty then begs him to rescue the other fairies, and Aina jumps in, urging Shiru to help. Shiru nods, promising they'll pull it off and head there together, starting by rushing to the Adventurers Guild. The moment they step into the guild, a pack of adventurers huddles in hushed whispers, all focused on Shira's request to wipe out the rhinoceros beetles, and Knight leans in and tells him she gets. But she's terrified because the mission is 200% impossible. Shiru freezes in shock while Aina and Patty behind him look crushed. The guildmaster keeps talking, laying it out plain. Wiping out a nest of rhinoceros beetles is a massive, near-mythic job, and if they do it, they can only pull in at least half the guild's adventurers. That young man frets over the price of hiring all these people, and Naya snaps back. Yeah, money isn't the only monster here. They're short on influence too. Most adventurers are out in the forest hunting ruins, and if those nests were near the city, things would move fast. But the fairies' territory sits way out of reach, so they can't pull the adventurers together. The guild master shoots her a crushing apology for being powerless, turns her back and says she's got other things to handle, but Shira refuses to quit. The young man orders her to wait, then tells Nay to stop treating it like a job and start seeing it as a straight deal. Nay looks completely lost, so he leans in and demands she pay close attention. At that exact moment, he slams his inventory ability on. Boom, a portal rips open right in front of her, and Maggie's jaw drops at what she sees while Shira quickly explains. That's my inventory ability, and it's my proposal. Once they finally crack the location of the ruins, he jumps in and uses his power to sling items, armor, and more straight where they need them. So even if his request drags on for days, their exploration doesn't fall behind. Then he leans in and asks the guild master what she really thinks. Nay flashes him a tempting answer, and hope sparks in the young man's chest. But she's got her own enchanted item, one that lets her open an inventory too, so Shiru's jaw drops and Nay's stunned like, "Your power's at least 3 wagons worth." Interfield feels gutted for him, and Nay apologizes again, furious with herself that she still can't accept the request. Then Eldos crashes in and demands, "What's going on?" And she gets cut off mid-sentence. Eldos leans in and asks if the young man is in trouble, and Shiru snaps back, asking if he's being too loud, then quickly apologizes. He insists he must exterminate the rhinoceros beetles in the forest, and after a brief beat, the dwarf decides he doesn't need to say anything else, and Eldos is. Shiru frowns, blurts that he can't believe he's serious, so why would he help after everything? The dwarf snaps back, "Did you truly forget after the bet?" The young man insists, "No, I remember." Then the eldest scowls, "No way, you really forgot." Shiru presses harder, "And you're serious? Nay said this is a huge mission." The dwarf lifts his axe, then crumbles to dust. Then he snaps at him not to lump him in with those weaklings. He can take on the beetles single-handed and not even break a sweat. Right then, Lara bursts in, saying he wrecked everything, and the Azure Flash crew jumps in too, offering to go with them. Nay snaps in, sword raised as rage flashes across her face, and she spits out that the contracts won't allow a single request unless the guild approves it, and any off-the-books work will be punished. But Eldos slams right over her, shouting that she's got it all wrong, and Lyra steps in like, "The dwarf's right." Eldos claims Eldos. Yeah, Eldos lost a bet, and that's why helping Shiro is his payment. Kilfak cracks a joke that the dwarf dropped like it was a grand finale, and Eldos snaps at her to shut up. Meanwhile, Litter keeps talking, insisting his crew is Shiro's friend, and they'll help him. No payment, no questions. Neska lifts a finger and declares, "Since you're not asking for pay, this isn't some job request." Kilfa clings to Shiro and blurts, "If our friends need us, of course we'll help." And that promise hits the young man right in the heart. And then he thanks them and swears that the moment the monsters are gone, they're cracking open those drinks and partying hard. A bunch of adventurers walking by catch the tail end of it and straight up ask if, by helping out, they can get their hands on more of Shiro's drinks. The cluttered young man smirks and says it all depends. While he was sorting his stock, he stumbled on a bottle of fairy mead, and the moment the adventurers spotted it, jaws dropped. They couldn't believe he had the legendary drink, so they burst into the mission on the spot, and a ton more jumped in right behind them. Then they spun around, nerves blazing, and insisted she wouldn't let it go. Everyone needed to be hunting for the rumens instead. She jabs her finger at the young man and demands to know what proof he's got. Then Patty suddenly pops out from inside Aina's backpack, smugly revealing herself and declaring that, yes, he really does have the mead. She knew the reason, she'd crafted it herself, so Shiro snapped, "Why are you coming out of hiding, Chief?" And Nay's eyes go wide when the fairy turns to the young man and starts grilling him about what's really going on. The young man lets out a heavy sigh, then admits it plain. Patty is his boss, and yeah, it was her idea to get rid of the rhinoceros beals. The fairy just wanted to rescue the rest of her kind, but he's only a merchant, so there's no way he could take on those monsters by himself. With determination burning in his chest, he drops into a bow to the guild master, begging him to save the fairies, and then the tears spill from his eyes. She drops to her knees, bows, and begs him to save Patty's family. And just like that, the fairy promises that if they beat the beetles, she'll brew mead for everyone, and begs Nay to help the fairies. Then Nay's trapped in a tough spot. She snaps that Shiro was cruel, making her look like the villain, and right after that the guild master barks orders, telling every bronze-level adventurer to get ready for battle. They were about to smash the rhinoceros beehive, and she barked out orders for everyone to follow her straight into the depths of the forest. Then the adventurers launched with pure determination. They keep marching until Patty blurts out that they've arrived. Then Shiro freezes as the fairy points straight at a dungeon entrance and says the nest is inside. Patty explains the reason. With monsters lurking there, the fairies never could leave. At the cave mouth, a few fairies finally creep into view, starving but terrified to step out. Shiro whips around to Lyre and asks, "So you're telling me this was for real?" The ruins of the ancient magical civilization the guild had been hunting for. The fairy swears that strange cave has always been there. Her clan's leader insists it's an old relic, something built by a forgotten civilization long ago. And now, staring at it myself, I can barely believe my eyes. Dreams really can come true. Then she whips out a map and lays out her game plan. Split up into 3 groups by rank and make one thing the priority: no casualties. The 6 mithril-ranked fighters kick off a surprise strike straight into the ruins. The 17 gold-level adventurers choke off anything that crawls out of the entrance, and the 15 silver-level squad finishes the job on anything that slips through the cracks. She keeps barking orders at Eldos. Since he's platinum-ranked, he should hang back to handle any emergencies. But Shiori snaps back with a warning. He's walking into that nest alone. And then the dwarf bolts out of nowhere, screaming, eyes bulging, completely stunned. Right after that, the other adventurers copy his move and blow up Nea's temper. She's furious at those hot-headed fools. She snaps that the Azure Flash stays put to protect Shiro and Patty, and the team promises they'll take care of the rest. Then Nea drops the bombshell. The plan just changed. She's barking orders for everyone to charge after Eldos into the nest. Then she swings right into her next command: get the monsters lured out of the ruins. The adventurers square off in a brutal ruling battle, fighting the monsters tooth and nail. While Shiro glances at his watch, he realizes 2 hours have already gone by since they stepped in, and he just prays everyone's safe. Right then, Nei shows up, and Shiro barrels toward her, firing off questions about how the mission is going. But before he can get answers, Eldos explodes into laughter, mocking what Shiro thinks he's doing. With his trusty axe riding on his back, the dwarf claims he didn't even break a sweat. Then Nei nods and says Ed alone already smashed almost all the beetles. The guildmaster backs it up, swearing she saw it firsthand, and insists there isn't a single living monster left. Shiro stands there, stunned out of his mind, because he can't wrap his head around the fact that Eldos wiped out hundreds of monsters by himself. Lyra can't believe it either, and the young man blurts out, "So what, did those monsters have a queen bee for a final boss?" But the dwarf just shrugs, no clue at all, and says if it was around, he would have smashed it with the rest. Then he snaps his attention to Nei, belly growling, demanding meat and drinks right now. Sheer storms back to Patty and blurts that it's good news, and the fairy stammers, "Yeah," right along with her. Then the young man leans in and asks if she wants to tell the other fairies, right as she opens her mouth to answer. He hears a cry for help and immediately snaps to attention. She asks if he heard it too, but he's totally lost. Then her face changes, and she bolts off with an alarmed shout that she has to go now. The young man goes, too. He's worried about her and sprints after her as Lara calls out, "Where are you going?" Suddenly he hears strange noises, and a tiny fairy bursts in, flapping wildly and screaming for help. Right when Patty arrives, the little fairy gets snatched by the monster's claws as it zeroes in on the beal. But Patty freezes, worried her magic could accidentally hurt the other fairy. So she changes the plan on the spot, swings at the monster instead, and barks at it to let the little fairy go. The beetle blasts her away, and Shiro rockets over, all worried. At the same time, Kilfa vaults onto the monster, swears she knows its weak spot, and drives her blade straight in, right through the insect. The little fairy is finally freed, and drops down in the open. Right then, Nesca snaps an ice spear spell into place and hammers the monster with it, while Patty rockets over to the fallen fairy, scoops her up, and demands, "You all right?" "Yeah, thanks for the help, sorceress and scout." Then Lyre whips his head around, shouting to see if they're okay. because he and Rolf are getting slammed by monsters, and the warrior insists this whole spot is crawling with insect swarms, with the nest spitting them out non-stop, until the group is boxed in from every side. And Nay's jaw drops when the dwarf wipes them all out. Then an adventurer rushes in, shouting that he spotted a gap in the back of the nest, hidden until the monster bodies blocked their sight, and Nay snaps back. "Are you serious? You've got to be joking." Patty snaps that as guild master she's dropped the ball, and warns that if they don't stop these guys, the fairies are doomed. Shiro then asks if she can pull out her old magic, while Lyra fumes that the enemies just won't run out. And when the young man grabs Patty's side, Lyra fires back. "What are you doing?" "What?" Shiro shoots a quick question at the fairy. "You ready? We've got to move at the same time." And she nods, ready to go. The young man braces his makeshift flamethrower side by side with Patty, and together they unleash one jaw-dropping wall of fire. The monsters drop, just scorched to ash, and the duo stares in shock like, "We actually pulled it off, but did we go too far?" At least they'd aimed the whole thing up at the sky. Lara leans in, asking if he's sure he's not secretly a great mage, but Nesca barges in mid-sentence and shoves a finger toward something down the way. A colossal monster just erupted out of the sky, bearing razor-sharp, nightmarish teeth that look ready to tear everything apart. Lyra's frozen in shock, then Nesca blurts, "That's the queen." Kilfa panics, staring at her like she's huge. Shiro turns to Patty and asks if she can cast that magic again, and the fairy grins, "Yeah, I'll wipe out this pest in seconds." Rolf shoots back, "She's coming," and the queen beetle crouches to smash in with those massive jaws, and Shiro and Patty freeze for a heartbeat. Then Eldos explodes forward with his special move, Thunder of Justice **. He blasted the monster again and again, with a storm of crackling electric attacks. As the wounded queen begins to topple, the dwarf blurts out an apology for keeping everyone waiting. "Sure, Eldos, but you didn't have to." He insists because he's only paying back his debt. Either way, it had been ages since the dwarf finally swung his trusty war axe, sequel, handed to him by that immortal witch herself. And when Shiro hears Eldo's words, he leans in, asking if the word justice is carved into the blade. Ella confirms it, then tells him to thank Sigil, because now he can fire off justice magic twice a day. The young man even remembers his grandmother was obsessed with an action show called *Real Justice*, headlined by Steven Sigil. The elder demands how the young man knows all that, and Shiro blurts out the whole story. Then the dwarf shoots back, asking if he's Alice Gawaimio's grandson, saying they even look a little alike too, when a voice suddenly shouts, "Patty." She asks what's going on there, then spins around and bam, the fairy locks eyes with the clan leader. Several fairies burst out from behind the trees, and Lyra's jaw drops at how many there are, while Nesca can't stop gushing over just how adorable every single one is. In a low, thunderous voice, the clan leader demands why Patty is even here. She's been exiled, and then questions why humans are battling the beetles, but Patty erupts in outrage, snapping, "Why do you care at all? You're the one who kicked me out of your territory, so I don't owe you a thing." Shura strides up to the leader and declares, loud and clear, Patty just saved his life. She urged him to wipe out the monsters and rescue the fairies, and the elder snapped back, asking if Patty had finally come back to save them, marveling at the cruel twist that the curse's bearer is the one who's saving their skin. Nesca blurts out about the curse, and Patty drops her shirt to reveal a birthmark on her belly, then tells her the chilling truth. If a fairy is born with that mark, disaster will slam into their people. The sorceress can't look away, because it turns out that symbol is really a seal. Nestor tells her that the guild's sorcerers called it a seal, and anyone who was born with that mark was cursed. No, blessed with terrifying magical power. Long ago, so many seal bearers were trapped in pure misery, because they couldn't rein in their powers, and the magic swallowed them whole. But that was ages ago. Back then, they figured out anyone could master magic if they nailed the basics, and now most people with that kind of power chase the title of sorcerer and climb to the very top among all magic users. Even in remote tribes, some people still clung to nasty lies about the seals, but none of it was worth fearing. They called it a gift from the gods. The tribe's elder was stunned, because if that was true, then the legend had to be wrong. Nesca steps in and offers Patty the basics of magic, since she learned it during her time at the Magic Academy. Patty makes her move, and the sorceress leans in to tell her. If she can learn to control her powers, she'll be able to help the fairies on her own next time. Then the clan leader rushes in and apologizes to Patty for every bit of suffering she endured, swearing that as her grandfather's leader, he's ashamed of what he did. The fairy sits there stunned when the elder even starts her meal first, then keeps apologizing non-stop. She told him to shut up and stop apologizing, then wrapped him in comfort, saying that if he hadn't expelled her, she'd never have met Shuru, and none of them would have been able to save everyone. And just like that, it hit her. In the end, everything really did work out, and the elder was right all along. The other fairies shrink with shame, but Patty snaps. We did nothing wrong. Time slides by, and before long they're back at Shuru's shop, and the young man presses her, asking if Patty really planned to go back to the fairy kingdom. The fairy snaps back that she only came because her grandfather told her to, and Aina starts crying, begging not to say goodbye to Patty. Then Patty whispers the truth. Humans live so briefly that if she stayed, sooner or later they'd all be gone, and she'd be left alone again. And honestly, she only showed up to find her friend, yeah, the one who's supposed to understand, because the fairy even thanks them for everything they've done. Then, out of nowhere, Karen bursts in breathless and shoves her a letter, saying she dug it up in her great-great-grandfather's things. And it was meant for her friend. Patty asks her to open the letter, and the fairy's friend starts off by telling her that Patty is his dearest friend. He tells me it's been ages since they swore they'd come back to me. Seasons flipped, years vanished, and she never stopped needling him, laughing that his arms were too skinny. And now, they're even thinner than before, so if she lays eyes on him, she'll roast him for sure. He can barely move, forget running, yet he still daydreams about the times he sprinted through the forest with her. Patty is so moved by the letter that he keeps reading, and then he blurts out that years ago he met an elf who told him the truth. Fairies can live way longer than humans. He begged the elf to translate your name, Patty Folly Lou, the one who cuts straight through fate. Then he couldn't stop himself, grinning like it was magic as he wrote the letter and kept whispering it to his own thoughts. Then he blurts out, I haven't told you my name yet. His name was Sankarika. He thanks Patty for being part of his life, even calling out Erin Sankarika as her friend. Shureva blurts out, all excited, how Patty made that mead, or was it some secret fairy recipe? Patty laughs and tells him it's not magic at all, just simple. Then she grins and offers to teach him, popping a little honey into her mouth first. Right after the fairy dumps everything into a bottle, she starts chewing and talking with her mouth full, and Shira can't help but think. Yeah, reality really can be brutal sometimes. Karen clutches her ancestor's letter and says Patty was a huge help to her great-great-grandfather, and the fairy's voice trembles as she adds that her friend's name used to be Erin. And somehow he even dug up her name, pretty impressive. She thinks back on every moment they shared and admits he was her one and only friend, just like she was his. But he'd fallen head over heels in love, had kids, and even saw great-grandkids grow up. Sherba swears it's true. With tears streaming down her face, Patty adds, I'm just so happy he got to live a full life packed with joy. Shura tells her straight up, yeah, humans don't stick around long, but when it comes to friendship, time doesn't even matter. The young man insists that deep down, Patty still sees Erin as her friend, and always will. Then he wipes her tears and the fairy nods, saying, you're right, even Karen's finally changed too. The young man pleads with the fairy to carry him, and Ina too, right in her heart, even if it's just a tiny corner, and then he reaches into his pocket. He pulls out a photo of Ina and Patty smiling beside him, throwing the peace sign, and the second he does, he declares that every person in that picture is his friend, his best friends, no less. Patty's eyes fill instantly, and Ina breaks down too, crying as she promises that she and the fairy are companions. As the adventurers of Azure Flash step in, Lyre breaks into a warm smile and calls them friends, while Kilfalots out of Meow gushes about how lucky they are to be friends with the fairy. Then Nesca closes in with a serious look, tells Patty she gets exactly what the fairy's feeling, and adds that since she's half-elf, she'll live far longer than humans. Even so, she still loves Lyre with her whole heart, and she's not scared of what those feelings might unleash. Lyre meets her gaze as the sorceress keeps going, promising that every second she gets with him will carve itself into her heart forever. Nesca fires back, asking the fairy what she'll do, and Patty, she's decided. She shot back that she wasn't scared of a thing and that she'd stick with them, because the clan leader never once said when she'd be back. Plus Nesca had promised to teach her magic, and Patty couldn't just walk away and leave that crybaby Ina behind. She tells them time hits different for her, so she won't come back to her kingdom until Shuru dies of old age. Then the young man awkwardly chuckles and blurts that he's nowhere near that yet. Aina and Tears tighten it a hug with Patty, and Patty jolts back, sputtering that the girl can't just wrap her up like that out of nowhere. And just like that, everything finally got settled. 2 months vanished in the blink of an eye, and the Harvest Festival day was here at last, with the whole city dressed up and buzzing non-stop. Because Sharavan had promised the mayor he'd help run the festival, he ordered Aina to snap photos of everyone. while he and Karen were busy auctioning off their items. And that young man was shouting like he'd just struck gold, waving a bottle of spiritus, the hero-killing drink, and calling out the bids as the crowd fought tooth and nail for every single auction item. Shiro declares the last item. This drink is so insanely good that only the ones favored by a fairy can even taste it. The kid licks the bottle of meat, then keeps talking, saying it was made by Patty, the city's brand new tourism ambassador, while the fairy ducks a little and Shiro calls out for a massive round of applause for her. The bidding starts at one measly gold coin, and the young man keeps hammering higher and higher. Then, right after the auction, Karen and Shiro flop down on a bench in the plaza while he revels in the win. And you've got to see the mayor's hilarious face when she remembers how she looked the moment her mead got sold. Karen erupts in protest, insisting that anyone would snap after getting that much money, especially when he sold the drink for a whopping 50 gold coins. And sure enough, Smile swears this is going to work miracles for the city's economy. The mayor grabs Shiro's hands and thanks him, because none of this could have happened without him. Shiro turns bright red and insists it was only his idea, while Patty made the drink, so Karen should thank her instead. The mayor nods, and Patty steps up to join them. The fairy clocks the conversation and blurts that she suddenly remembered something. Then she asks her question, and Patty, totally unbothered, goes, "So, can you two make a baby?" Shrew panics and blurts, "What are you talking about?" And Karen's face flames red as she snaps that they're not even together. Then the fairy drops the bomb. Stella told her about reincarnation, so if the two had a baby, maybe their friend could come back as someone new. Mortified, Shiro blurts that humans can't just make babies on a whim. They've got to pass through ceremonies first. And Karen panics right away, snapping that he's absolutely right, because the road there is full of challenges, but Patty cuts in before the rest can land. Shouting for everyone to shut up, he snaps that Shiro's refusing, then rages that they'll make a baby right now, on the spot. The young man shoots back that it's straight-up abuse of power. Just then, Stella and Anna burst in, and the little girl asks if the auction is over. Shiro says yes, then turns the question around, asking how the photos came out. A little girl blurts out that she'd love a photo with all of them, and he can't help thinking it's a brilliant idea. Then the night falls, no streetlights anywhere, just lantern glow washing the whole place in gentle light, because Ninorich was the city Iren built from the ground up. Shiro braces to snap the picture, barking orders so everyone fits perfectly in frame. Then a wound suddenly cries out to him. He whirls around and demands who she is, but she smirks and asks if he truly doesn't recognize her, her face barely lit. So he finally fesses up that he can't place her and asks where he's seen her before. As the lights blaze across her, the young woman steps up and snaps at Shiro, calling him a fool, because she's his grandmother. Yeah, it all comes back. Every detail of how he was 100% sure his grandmother was alive, and that she'd show up at the festival. Even after he started his life as a merchant, finding her again was still his biggest wish. But the truth only hit him 2 months ago, when Karen told him the witch had visited the Harvest Festival the year before. Back then, he was on a mission with Azure Flash, getting ambushed by insect monsters. He met Patty Falulu during all of it, and that moment stuck with him like gold. So much happened, and before he even realized it, the Harvest Festival was finally here. Right as Shiro was having the time of his life at the festival with his friends, she suddenly showed up, no warning. Shocked, Shiro blurts out what she just said, and she calmly tells him she's his grandmother. Aina blurts out who the woman is, and the woman answers, "I'm your grandmother." The little girl squints and says she's way too young to be one, then grins, steps right up to Shiro, flashes a peace sign, and asks, "Don't you see it?" Shiro freezes, sees the sign, and jolts back, panicking, "No, I'm not your grandmother." He snaps back with righteous indignation. His grandma was over 80 years old, a sweet little old lady, not some young, high-class girl, and no way that could have been her. Karen tiptoes up, calling out Rizu, and the witch clocks her instantly, then asks how she's doing. A young man's jaw drops when the mayor praises the witch, saying the festival was a huge success and that it all happened because of Shiro, who pulled it off. And Arisu watches every second like she's ready to shout, knowing her Shiro was the reason it worked. The witch swears he turned into a good man and says it was totally worth dragging him to all those festivals when he was a kid. Shiro presses her, asking straight up if she's really his grandmother, and she won't back down. Then Shiro's treated like a roommate with questions. The young man asks what her favorite movie is, and Arisa grins and says it's Lethal Weapon. He pushes on, grilling her about her second favorite movie. Arisu answers, saying she could pick Braveheart asterisk, but she's choosing Mad Max asterisk instead. Then Shiro asks who her favorite actor is, and she shoots back without hesitation. Mel Gibson. Arisu just sighs, whining that he's way too cautious for his own good, and it honestly makes her sad. She asked, "Do you remember what happened when you were 7 on the way home with your pants?" And she had to change him. Then the young man snapped back, "You really didn't have to bring that up," and more importantly. So where had she been all this time, and why did she vanish without a single word? Arisu meets his eyes with a soft, trembling smile, apologizes, and begs him, "Don't be so sad." Patty shows up, clearly worried, and demands to know who that human is. She can feel a massive surge of mana rolling off her. Karen grins like she's got this, proudly saying she'll introduce her. The living legend herself, Arisu Gawamio, the immortal witch who refuses to die. People nearby hear it and start closing in fast. Everyone wants to talk to the witch. Arisu snaps at the mayor that she blasted her voice too loud, and Karen rushes to apologize, but the witch waves it off, saying she's already used to the noise. Still, she won't be able to enjoy the festival anymore. Right then, a magic circle suddenly opens. From the chaos, a blade suddenly bursts out. Someone jabs a finger at it and blurts that it has to be the legendary sword, Mel Gibson. Arisu shoots in an apology right on the spot, insisting this was her reunion with her grandson. Sword in hand, she sends everyone into sweet dreams. Soon the crowd nods off and drops into sleep, right on cue. Cheryl freaks out and asks what she did, and the witch just smirks, telling him it was only an illusion. She closes the distance and crushes him in a hug, and the young guy immediately jerks back, demanding what she's doing. Arisu snaps back that they've got to get out fast, and he can't even follow. So he yells what she means, and the witch just smirks like the answer should have been obvious. With a snap, Arisu yanks the portal open and shouts that they're going home. Then the gateway blooms into the inshore world, and the young man shrieks in pure despair as they plunge through the air. Right before they slam onto the house's roof, Arisu fires off her magic. Then they punch straight through the building and land on the ground floor. Shiro is crushed by the landing, while Arisu stretches wide and Grin laughs, saying it feels so unbelievably good to be home. A young man hands over a cup of tea, watches Aris take a sip, and starts reminiscing about how he used to be a bundle of trouble, only to serve tea so politely now. With an annoyed scowl, he snaps that he's 25 years old, and the witch immediately remarks that it looks like he's got something to say to her. Shura snaps back, "Of course I do, I've got a million questions," and then he starts right away. "First off, who are you?" Marisu pouts and says, "I told you I'm a witch, wasn't that enough?" Shura fires back that it still explains nothing, and demands she act her age. Shura bursts in, saying the family went wild and demanding to know why she vanished out of nowhere. Then Arissa snaps back that she can't explain it, because witches have their own rules, and the young man immediately grumbles that this excuse just isn't good. Then Shioro blurts out, asking if she's using magic to stay young, because it looks like the same illusion the witch used earlier, until the witch snaps back that this is actually her real face, and Shioro is left reeling in shock. Arisu spills the truth. Her old look was no accident. It was magic rewriting her body, because in their world, everyone would think it's weird if she just didn't grow older. She orders Shioro to watch closely. Then she morphs right in front of him, and the poor guy can barely process it when that girl instantly turns into an old woman. The witch smirks and asks if he's happy now, finally seeing the grandma he's always known. But Shioro snaps back that he isn't happy. He's just shocked, like this is way too much for his brain to handle. Arisu reveals that Shiro's grandfather once begged her to stay young forever for him, always showering her with cute, praising how beautiful she was. And then at night they'd lock in a passionate romance, faces burning close the whole time. Shiro cuts her off, snapping that he doesn't want to hear a word about his family, especially not his grandparents. Arisu laughs and fires back, asking if he's got any other questions, and then the young man opens his closet and reveals a portal right in it. Arisa tells how long ago she and her husband were flat broke. After pouring all their money into building their house, there was zero cash left for trips or vacations. So she snapped, turned the empty room into a portal, and opened a doorway between that world and Rufalcio. Together they tore through all kinds of fun, like Bistata Genti Elu.